little gig I got in.
Yeah, yeah, I just opened it up. You want half of it?
No, I have one.
Oh,
They gave me one.
Good.
yeah. Yeah, I don't think that was a good sign today, that there was no lunch.
Right.
Unless
Okay,
Rob
good.
got his second box.
All right.
I don't think so. I came in, he was already.
We'll get us the virtual sign-in sheet.
Okay.
I don't think we're gonna have to.
Probably at the end, what I'll do is ask, do you have anybody, has anybody signed up?
That's good. Good hearing.
When you come on, you're gonna play for free. They stopped
Okay.
all that even?
And when we talk about Jennifer will talk budgets.
Oh, does he?
He's just gonna talk stuff in the EDA part at the very end. And there's still some other EDA stuff we have to.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was looked as compensation, so they jerked me.
I don't know really what it honored him.
Right.
He got one. He'll show it to you.
Okay, good. All right.
Got one person that signed
I
up
told
to
you
speak,
what,
Cornelius Pitts.
Tim Mendenhall
So I think they're signing up for a CDBG item.
said, no more than you're playing, I'm gonna sell your club. You'd never know it.
Yeah.
And he'll also ask him.
My wife,
Okay.
Bill, you got your bill for your club storage and
Oh, yeah.
That's a good discussion.
Very good.
here's and I pay everything.
Keep our clubs out there.
Hit a ball in 5 years. Take these home. Tim's getting, what is it, $190, $250 a year or something?
It's some, you have a locker too, don't you? You have a locker. Oh, she has a locker. I don't know what they did.
Budget stuff.
Oh, right.
You keep, and like,
I used to keep us set over there, but you know, we change clubs,
yeah.
you know, more regularly than we probably should. And
I think I'll just wait until a later meeting. Worst case, get
that's it.
that's
Okay.
enough.
Okay.
We know it's gonna take 30 days and then maybe.
It was gonna take
I saw you leave.
I told,
All right, you ready?
I'd go right into the meeting and there I'd be.
Jerry, I'm just gonna use this. I'm just gonna use this.
Oh, no, I know. No. Nope, understand.
No.
All right. Hey. All right, I call the meeting to order. Clerk, can you take attendance, please?
Commissioner Allen,
Here.
Commissioner Norwood,
Here.
Commissioner Ezell,
Here.
Commissioner Waddell,
Here.
Commissioner Stallings,
Here.
Commissioner Mason,
Here.
Mayor Pinkinen.
Here. Okay. Everybody's in attendance. We are all here. Tonight, the invocation is going to be given by Commissioner Norwood, followed by the flag salute with Commissioner Stallings.
Can we stand for a word of prayer? All heads bow. Dear Heavenly Father, in the name of Jesus, Lord, we thank you for this day. For we know that this is the day that you've made, and you told us to rejoice and be glad in it. Lord, as I pray today, as we pray together collectively, Lord, I'm going to quote a scripture out of your word. It said, if my people, out of 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 14, if my people which are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will heal their land. Lord, we're asking you to heal the land today. There's not much that we can do without you. Lord, there's nothing that we can do without you. And Lord, we're asking that you will give us the knowledge, the wisdom, and the understanding in these times that are perilous, the times that we've watched so many commercials that said that these are trying times. And Lord, we're just asking in the name of Jesus that you will teach us how to love one another and how to help one another. And Lord, help us to make the right decisions. Lord, help us to make the right decisions in government. Help us to make the decisions that will bless everyone in the name of Jesus. And God, we just want to thank you for everything that you do for us. And Lord, personally, I thank you for this time because it helps me to reflect and realize that it's the small things that matters the most. And Lord, most of all, we just want to tell you thank you for how you've blessed Enid, Oklahoma, not disregarding or excluding anyone or not feeling like any other city or state or town is as important. But because we do live in this town, Lord, we just want to thank you that we don't have the higher numbers. And we're just asking you in the name of Jesus that you will help us to make the right decisions and help our mayor to be able to make the right decisions and help us as city councilmen to stand behind him making the right decisions and help the people to be acceptable and help them to realize that we all have a responsibility. And God, we just want to thank you, and we're just asking you to touch and protect our elderly, and that you will touch and protect our children and our families and our loved ones. And we're just asking you to touch those that have lost loved ones, those that are bereaving. Lord, please touch them. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Lord, we love you and we thank you for all things. In Jesus' name, amen.
Join me with the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you both. Next up, item number 3, minutes. Consider approval of minutes of the rescheduled regular commission meeting of April 21st, 2020.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask the clerk to call for a vote.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Norwood?
Aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Aye.
Commissioner Waddell?
Aye.
Commissioner Stallings?
Aye.
Mr. Mason?
Aye.
Mayor Pinkinen?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Item number 4.1. Item number 4 is hearings. Item 4.1, conduct a public hearing to receive comments regarding the annual action plan for the B20 Community Development Block Grant, funding from Department of Housing and Urban Development, Office of Community Planning and Development.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Tonight, we're just going to accept comments regarding the plan for the Community Development Block Grant program for this upcoming year, and those are published and listed here online. You can see those there. The funding committee, those are the recommendations. And I would also like to just put a little, say a little something about the census. Do your census information, because the money that we get from this and the CARES supplemental emergency funding goes by those numbers, the population. And when we get it, if we have more people, everybody's given their information, then we get more money. So that's just my plug for the census and grant funding.
Oh, good. All right, thank you. Scott, did we have anybody signed up for this hearing?
We do have one person signed up, Cornelius Pitts. I'm going to go ahead and take them off of mute and share their video.
Okay.
All right, Cornelius, we can hear you if you'd like to say anything.
Okay, hold just a minute. I need to start the video right there. Okay, am I still on the video? I don't see me.
That's okay. We can proceed with audio.
Okay, there we are now. So good evening, everybody. I trust all is well. What I wanted to say in addressing the money that has been allowed or been recommended, I was concerned a little bit that the Kids Cafe part, Youth Cafe part of Zoe was not recommended for the funding, and I just wanted to say to the council, that if it was any way to possibly consider, at least recommending some funding for the Youth Kids Cafe part of the of Zoe, the facility funds well, but in light of running the program itself, this year we were really asking for help with that, to have some funding for the program itself, for the kids program itself. So in a nutshell, that is all I wanted to say concerning the grant proposal for the year. Okay.
Did they request funding? Can you?
Yes, sir. The funding that was recommended for Zoe Cafe was $33,611, and we can move a portion of that money or all of it to the program instead of the facility, or break it up into however they would like to do that. So if they want to call or contact, I'll get a vote from the funding committee, and this will come before the commission on May 19th. So we have plenty of time to make those arrangements.
Okay.
Well, this is Commissioner Waddell. I'd speak to that real quick. I sit on that board, and I don't think anybody on the board would have a problem with changing those funds to be one or the other or both with that amount. Whatever is going to help the program the most. They know their priorities better than the board would. So I, for one, would definitely support that, and I would back that in the meeting that we would meet to discuss that.
Okay, so this is the hearing. What will happen is there'll be another CDBG board meeting before our next meeting? Is that correct?
No, we don't have another board meeting.
Okay.
But we can change the recommendation just before it goes before the commission on May 19th.
Also, me and Commissioner Allen, we're both on that board, and Commissioner Waddell, I'm pretty sure I can speak for myself. I agree to the change. What about you, Commissioner?
Yes, I mean, they're going to get $33,000 is what we want to do. Now, how they want to split that up, whether it's facilities or services, is up to them at this point.
Okay, so I believe that's majority because Tammy Wilson is the only other person on that board, so.
Okay, all right. Were there any other organizations that we declined to fund?
Nope, just all of the city projects, sir.
Okay.
And we'll find another way to fund some of those projects anyway.
Okay, all right.
And I would like to say also, even with the monies that we had allotted to making a difference over a year ago, I mean, those funds are still available if not used,
Okay.
in the future, and we'll figure out exactly what we want to do with that as well. The main thing, we just want to make sure that we meet the needs, of every program. And in the past, we've spoken with different organizations and different programs. We don't want the programs to completely rely on CDBG funding because we don't know if it's going to be here forever, and they have to figure out different solutions and different ways to be able to market those after-school programs. And if there's anything that we can do to help them, I'm pretty sure we're willing to do that. I mean, we don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to learn more since I am the president of that committee. Stephanie, I'm gonna have to get a little bit closer to you in that aspect as far as learning, how CDBG funding works and spend a little bit more time with you personally to be able to do what I can to help make a big difference with the after-school programs for the children. So I apologize that I haven't taken out as much time because my time is very limited, but I'm going to try to do what I can in the future to be able to help those programs and see if we can find some more funding, because I know that there are grants and different things that are available. A lot of times we just don't know where they are. So I want to learn, really, I'm telling you this today before everyone in Enid, that I want to learn how to be able to find funding to help these children, because we're responsible. You know, a lot of times we say, well, these are not our kids. It doesn't matter, you know, if they're your children or not, they're children. And as adults, it's time for us to take care of our children. So I'm willing to do all that I can to make that happen.
Okay, good. Thank you. All righty.
Right.
Okay. No other discussion on that? Okay.
Is there anybody else? That's all
That
that
was
was
it,
signed
right?
up, right? So,
Okay. Next item is 4.2, conduct a public hearing to receive comments regarding a plan for the B20 Community Development Block Grant, Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security Act, supplemental funding from Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Yes, this was the amazing $267,084 that we received to help with the urgent needs. I worked with United Way and the Human Services Alliance to come up with the priority needs for this funding. And it was unanimously utilities, rent or mortgage, and groceries, not just like food baskets or whatever, but like groceries or something to get like necessities that for people who haven't received any unemployment benefits because they're overwhelmed as well. So some people have not even received those, so they're being evicted. We haven't implemented cutoffs yet, but I'm sure that we will want to get paid, and so will the other utility service providers. So those were the things, and CDSA jumped on board with us, as well as Catholic Charities, and decided that they would help us do this because they have the capacity to do it and they're experts at this. So we have we have a contract on tonight's agenda for them to do that, and they are opening up those applications and getting people taken care of.
good.
I have a question about the first number, the 67.
Yes.
It says City of Enid. Are you guys actually going to manage that?
Yes, sir. Yes, we do. And how that works is that a subrecipient like CDSA or Catholic Charities or another organization such as Zoe and these other organizations, they run the programs, they send us the invoices, and then if it's an eligible expense, we reimburse them for that. So CDSA will be paying the landlords directly. No individual will receive a check for anything. It'll go straight to the utility company or the landlord.
CDSA or the Catholic Charities. I just wondered how we internally, what we were doing with the 67,000 in the City of Enid. It says homeless distancing, sanitation.
Oh, okay, that is, yes, the 6784. We have placed some porta potties for the homeless throughout the city. And we are working with other nonprofit organizations such as, Gerald's going to have to, Forgotten Ministries.
Let me go ahead and jump in. We and Commissioner Norwood, you were at the meeting we had sometime in late March. Part of the COVID pandemic has affected everybody, including our population, our homeless population, folks that have not been able to work and are hungry. And so one of the things we had talked about at that meeting, trying to get some nonprofits together, such as Forgotten Ministries.
Some of the churches.
I think Salvation Army might have been there. Can't remember. Anyway, what our intent with that 67,000 is to the porta potties will be probably a $2,000 or $3,000 expense. The bulk of that money, our intent is to distribute to those agencies like Forgotten Ministries, Salvation Army, Our Daily Bread, maybe RSVP, the agencies that have been feeding people all this time. And so that was why I had asked Stephanie to allocate that portion of money. I know that Forgotten Ministries specifically, based on our request at that meeting, started feeding folks again. This was not their normal time frame. They are going to stop doing that as of tomorrow. And I think one of the benefits of the COVID issue has been everybody's gotten to know each other a little bit better. And so I know I heard from Jeremiah today that he's been in close contact with Salvation Army. Salvation Army's been feeding people the whole time, and they still feed them. So the intent is basically to break that money up somehow, maybe based on numbers they've fed, and distribute it to those groups. That's our intent.
You remember there was a lady that reached out to me.
Yes.
Some money being dedicated.
Yes, and I know that I haven't talked to her in a while, or vice versa, so I don't know what that means, but I think our effort, we at the city have, I mean, it's difficult for us. The homeless issue itself is a problem that we can't necessarily solve. It's a societal problem. However, I feel good about what we did, and we did have those conversations, and I think that she respected what we did. It may not have been everything she wanted, but we did put out porta potties at not only Forgotten Ministries, but at 580, at the library downtown. We would have put them over by the Hope Outreach Day Room, but they had to close for a period of time. So I feel good about what we've done there. And then with Jeremiah and his organization, the people backing him starting up, and then when we found out we got this money, it seemed like that's where we should put a significant portion of it.
And also, Gerald, I want to add to what you were saying. Some more of the provisions that were made, individuals that hadn't had their clothes cleaned for, a long time. They were cleaning individuals' clothing, and also there were shower stations set up to where they could take showers. And the numbers that were being fed went from 125 to 300 people a day, daily, from the time that this had started. So they've worked very hard, just in that one, with Forgotten Ministries alone.
Yeah, that's an outstanding point. They also gave out sleeping bags. You'll remember, we had some cold spells in March and maybe early April, and we're kind of getting some unseasonably cool weather now. So we appreciate their efforts. All the agencies, Salvation Army, I believe Hope Outreach is open again, allowing showers now. So that's another reason why Jeremiah's organization feels like they can close down after tomorrow. So I think with your leadership and the distribution of this money to those organizations and their leadership and action, it has a positive impact. So happy to do it. We're glad the federal government gave us that money.
So fill out your census so we can get more.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Any other discussion? Was there anybody that wanted to talk on that point? Any others? No, nobody signed up. Okay. Item number 5, administration. 5.1, consider an emergency resolution adopting the B20 Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus Aid, Relief and Economic Security Act, funding from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. So that's the item we just discussed, 4.2, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Alicia, can you take the roll?
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Norwood?
Aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Aye.
Commissioner Waddell?
Aye.
Commissioner Stallings? Commissioner Mason?
Aye.
Mayor Pinkinen?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. A lot of work on that, appreciate it. It's really helped our community. Next item up is 5.2, approval of the City of Enid COVID-19 phase plan. And before we do that, I wanted to let each one of the commissioners have a chance to speak. This would have went a little different at the last meeting, but since it's already in place, I did want to hear what the views were individually of everybody. I think the last time we did this, I started with Commissioner 1 and worked our way to 6, so this time I'd like to start the other way. Commissioner Mason, do you have anything you'd like to say regarding the plan, just in general?
I'll just say that all the feedback that I've got's been very, very positive. So I'm glad that we've got a 3-step plan. I hope we're able to look at going to phase 2 quicker than June 1. But, we'll see what the numbers look like. But, and Mayor, I appreciate you through this whole thing. That's got to be a tough position to have been in. You probably got more calls than any of us, but it's interesting how 1 minute you can get a call where absolutely for it, and then the next phone call passionately against it. So we do appreciate your guidance through this. So I'm happy that we've opened it back up. I get nothing but good, positive feedback for the most part, and I hope we're able to continue to do that.
Okay, all right. And we will be talking after this about modifying the declaration. But what we have to do is kind of approve this thing, and then we can make the modifications we want to at any time as a commission. So, Commissioner Stallings.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
The Commissioner Ezell and Commissioner Waddell are asking you commissioners and the mayor to try to speak into your mics a little better for them.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Commissioner Stallings.
I'm also, like Commissioner Mason, pleased with the plan, and I too would like to commend you and the staff that worked on this over the weekend, getting it done. You got it done right. You brought in the right people. You got good medical advice, and I think we have a great plan. And I'll be interested too. We got some tweaking to do to it, and we got some on the agenda tonight, but I'm very happy with the way it's gone so far.
Okay, good. Thank you. Commissioner Waddell.
Yes, I'll echo the sentiments of, I appreciate all the work that the staff and you, the mayor, have done to put this together. My statement is more for the community to remember. We've opened up certain businesses, but to remember that the issue that we're facing is still real and it's very present. The issue that where we're at right now is we just don't know how present it is. And so exercise precautions, protective measures for yourself. Opening up certain businesses wasn't exactly a license to just go wherever to do whatever, whenever. This very quickly, as we could see, remember, we started seeing this at the beginning of the year. We're in May right now, and so that's how quickly it can turn from not knowing the name to killing tens of thousands of people. And I'm not saying that's necessarily going to happen here because if we exercise the precautions that are necessary. So we've opened up the doors to certain businesses, but let's not forget to exercise certain precautions that we can do without losing certain liberties at the same time.
All righty, thank you. Commissioner Ezell.
I think we're being incredibly responsible. We don't have the testing in place to know what on earth is going on in this community. We don't have test results back from the several hundred tests from nursing home last week. We don't have adequate tests to know what's going on in this community. So we're gambling. And I think we are foolishly doing so. We should not be opening this up until there's the infrastructure in place to know what the infection rate actually is in the community. And there's no one that knows that. Not any of us, not our Garfield County Health Director, not either hospital administrator. We are acting in ignorance. And we're acting in ignorance in wishful thinking that this doesn't hit our community. And I hope it doesn't. I hope we're fortunate. But Guyman, Oklahoma is seeing a big spike right now. We are seeing spikes not just in the big cities, not just in New York City. There are spikes taking place all over the country. And we are at risk of that happening here. We have told the community that it's time to open things up. And we are not showing great leadership because the community has taken this sign of good news to go, I think, further than is responsible. But we don't have good news to give. We have no news. The only news we have is we don't know what the numbers are, but we're hoping for the best. I truly, truly hope that this is an issue of me and others being reactionary, being overly concerned. But I am shocked that the entire state, not the entire country, lots of the country is being a lot more careful, but the entire state is jumping into this headfirst without knowing how deep the water really is. We could be more careful, and I strongly encourage the community to act with more caution than either the governor or this body is encouraging. I hope it doesn't come back and bite us in the ass.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Norwood.
I will just say that like I've spoken to the mayor, I hope that we take a lot of precautions. I understand that we need to be able to maintain our economy. I get that. But I also realize that lives are more important, and that we need economy in order to live. I mean, we have to work to be able to provide and survive. The federal government won't be able to continue to, send money out to different states. As myself, I don't qualify for different things, and that's okay. As long as I can work, I'm gonna make it. I'm not in the shoes of those that, don't have any money. I feel for them. But I also feel for those who have lost loved ones. I know people personally who have passed away from this. I prayed and I said, Lord, I hope I'm wrong. In regards of reopening this thing, I hope for the best. I hope that we're making the right decision. It looks like it's already been made. But I'm glad, Mayor, that you did put in the declaration that if we see a spike in numbers, that we will impose restrictions. Thank you for being mindful of that, caring enough to do that we will impose restrictions so that lives will be saved. I mean, do we have the answers? No. I don't believe any one of us in this room has an answer. But one thing I do know that, we just have to be responsible and hope for the best. And those that pray and believe in the power of prayer, keep praying. Because that's the only thing that's going to help us. Only God knows why. And he has the power to make change. So therefore, personally, I don't know. But he does.
Thank you. Commissioner Allen.
The only decision I have to make regards Enid, Oklahoma, not the county, not the state, not the nation. And I feel like we're going in the right direction and that we have in place the ability to extend the time if we need to. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you all. I will tell you that from my side, Gerald and I were talking about enforcement actions. We've kind of opened up the city, but we want to make sure that everybody is abiding with the spirit and intent of the program. So what we don't want to see is everybody, the doors are open. Everybody can do whatever they want. We don't need a mask. We're all safe now. That's not the case. So we're looking at ways that we can approach that in a somewhat friendly way, and just let people know that you're not abiding by it, and please get on board with the rest of us and let's protect each other from this virus. So those are things that we're working on right now too to make sure that that works. And as Commissioner Norwood said, it is in the plan, and if we have to shut things down, it don't take very long to do that at all. The emergency declarations can happen in very, very short order. So we get numbers from the health department every single day, from not just the health department, but both the hospitals, and we're looking at those to find out what's going on. So do I think that we have a trend line that we can look at and show that it's going to be good and absolutely won't spike? No. What I will say is we can react very quickly, and we will. So that's all I had to say on that. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the phase plan.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Alicia, would you take the vote?
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Norwood?
Aye.
Commissioner Rozelle?
Nay.
Commissioner Waddell?
Aye.
Commissioner Stallings?
Aye.
Commissioner Mason?
Aye.
Mayor Pinkinen?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-1.
Do we need to move an emergency or no?
No.
Okay.
Okay. Item number 5.3. Ratify emergency declaration of April 30th, 2020 that went into effect on April 30th, 2020 at 11:59. Extending state of emergency and adopting Enid's COVID-19 phase plan. Okay, motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion?
This is where I make amendments.
No.
Is that right?
Next item.
Next item.
Next one.
The next item.
Yep. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, go ahead and take the vote.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Norwood?
Aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Nay.
Commissioner Waddell?
Aye.
Commissioner Stallings?
Aye.
Commissioner Mason?
Aye.
Mayor Pinkinen?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-1.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Item number 5.4, consider approval of a declaration revising the most recent declaration to allow sports practices while social distancing is maintained in Phase 1 and other amendments as proposed by city commissioners. So this is where if anybody had anything else they wanted to put in, I guess what they would do is make a motion, look for a second, and then we'll vote on it. So does anybody have any other additions?
I would like to propose two amendments, one at a time. The first is we have funerals and weddings that we have only allowed 10 people at. And throughout the globe and throughout history, people have taken time to bury the dead. And I just feel like the funeral homes and the churches and the cemeteries where these functions are held are capable of safety and welfare of the attendants. And so I would like to make an amendment on the declaration that after May 15th, that we would allow funerals and weddings to take place with more than 10 people.
Did you have a specific number in mind, or is it?
No number.
Okay. Okay.
What will be their responsibility in terms of precautions? Is it still going to be mandated that they use face coverings? Are there any type of precautions that are going to be levied on those types of arrangements? And if the numbers, if there's no cap on number, what other precautions are we going to look at?
Well, to make a cap on the number would be somewhat awkward. The churches and the funeral homes know their seating capacity, and so they'll have to dictate that. The churches are already doing that by us allowing them to open up and hold services. So that's why I didn't want to put a specific number. It just didn't make sense. And all the safety measures that would take place in those facilities anyway would continue. So I didn't have to make a distinction about that either.
Well, the thing that concerns me about, and I'm not necessarily opposed, but the part that does concern me is that if you look at weddings and funerals specifically, they're inherently intimate. Almost the immediate inclination is to hug, to embrace, to kiss the individuals that are present in those places to provide comfort. As there's a higher level of intimacy that's just that's inherently a part of those types of ceremonies. And so my question would be is that if we are going to permit those types of gatherings, what type of specific protections are going to be levied on them to ensure that if we do have 50 people at a gathering like that, we still require 6 feet of distancing between each family unit or each group? What type of practice, if we're not, because again, if we're going to allow a gathering of 100 people or permit that and not have any type of distancing required or anything at that point, there really is no argument to, stop anything at that point.
Carol, did you have a?
Yes, the social distancing measures still need to occur. And Commissioner Allen and I discussed this. And so for a very large wedding or a very large funeral, you need to have it in an appropriate place for the number of people, because you need to space them out. Depending on the conditions, people would be, you would assume some of the people would be wearing masks. I doubt that the groom and the bride would have a mask, but I would assume most of the attendants would have a mask, and it wouldn't be a problem. Our guidelines do not require masks, but our guidelines do require social distancing. So, they need to choose the church or the garden or the funeral home consistent with the number of people. And I know the funeral directors have called me several times, some of them, and we've talked about that. They understand that there still needs to be social distancing between people.
And I will also say, I've talked to several of those funeral directors, and one thing that they had all mentioned was that they would be willing to even announce ahead of time to the crowds that, because it is an emotional event, and we're just going to have to take extra precautions. But theoretically, it's not a whole lot different than letting them go to church either.
No, the intent of this is not to, about a reception or a funeral dinner afterwards. This is for the actual service itself. That's what I'm asking the amendment for, not what happens afterwards. We don't have any control over that. But for the actual event, social distancing.
Well, the amendment that you're making, what you just said, is it automatically covered with that if with the amendment he just made?
Yeah, it's covered under the definitions, the general definitions portion that applies to everybody.
Well, I would second his motion.
Yeah, to be accurate, it's section 8, B, closed activities and locations, and it's a strike on number 3, which says, it would strike prohibited phase 2. So public weddings and funerals with more than 10 participants are allowed after May 15th, 2020.
Okay. Yeah, you're talking about the plan.
Yes. The plan we just
Actually,
read.
right now, we're talking about the declaration.
Yeah.
But
Right.
anything we do in the declaration will adjust the plan.
Right. Yep. Okay.
I'd like to note that Dougherty County, Georgia, rural county, about 80,000 people, has had 1,500 confirmed cases of COVID and 115 deaths, all related to a funeral. That this is not the time to be opening this up even more broadly than we already have. I mean, that's not the only instance where one of these social gatherings has been linked to a spike, but it certainly is one of the more stark examples because it's not in a big metropolis. It's a community our size. It had 115 people die in a month. That we should not be adding this. We should be being more cautious.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion on the motion?
I just want to clarify real quick. So
Yep.
there are no other safety precautions that we are putting specifically on these types of engagements outside of the general guidelines that we have for any regular citizen walking on a sidewalk on a regular day.
Well, if it's taking place in a funeral home, Commissioner Waddell, you have your business guidelines. If it
Okay.
is taking place in a church, you've got your church guidelines as well.
Gotcha. Have we looked at but public spaces, if they were, let's say, in a cemetery or a gazebo on public property or something like that? It's different.
Yes, I understand that. I hadn't thought about that. Yes, weddings can take place in parks and gazebos.
We're restricting access to that right now in that we won't allow permits for that type of activity. Otherwise, cemeteries have been holding
can't hear anything. Everything's
gravesites
cut
for
out for
quite
me.
some time now.
Special events, we are not issuing special event permits at this time. We are waiting till June 1st on special event permits. So if someone applies for a wedding, say in Government Springs Park, currently, based on our understanding of the plan, we would tell them to schedule that June 1st or after.
Yes.
Well, and if it involves a permit, I don't know, I mean, there are gazebos in Garfield County's control, but anything that requires a permit, we can put special conditions on it. So for instance, a garage permit or a garage sale permit, we could say you have to socially distance. If they're going to use one of our parks for a wedding, we can note down the conditions and indicate you need to take the same precautions as a business. That's part of the permitting process.
Okay. Or they could just hold it at Lowe's.
God. Didn't make any points there.
I mean,
All right.
you have to be realistic on it. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
right?
All right. So,
Well, David, we could put more restrictions in place in Lowe's. I mean, we can all be smartass about the fact that these big retailers have been wildly unsafe. But instead of that being an excuse to loosen restrictions on everyone else, we could be more strict on the big retailers that are being dangerous.
Well,
I don't think
I
there's an
just think if
appetite
we
for it, but
maintain the
let's be
social
honest, we have
distancing-
other options.
Yeah. If we maintain the social distancing and see what happens, Ben. I mean, that's all we can do right now.
It is not all we can do. It is all we are choosing to do. It is not all we can do.
Well, and still sustain ourselves, it's all that we can do.
all right. Call to question. So do I need a second for that?
You have a motion and a second, I believe.
There's a motion and a second already. We were in discussion. Is there any other discussion, I guess? Seeing none, go ahead and take the vote.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Norwood? Commissioner Ezell?
Nay.
Commissioner Waddell?
Nay.
Commissioner Stallings?
Aye.
Commissioner Mason?
Aye.
Mayor Kankinen?
Aye.
I'd like to propose, well, you need to finish up by saying,
No, motion carried, 5.
Okay.
okay, the next amendment is,
Are you talking about 5?
yes,
Let me,
still,
let me introduce, well, that was 4.
Oh, no,
okay, you're
4.
still on 4.
still
Okay.
on 4. This was brought up by some of the high schools that still wanted to have graduation. I would open that we would allow outdoor graduation ceremonies to take place after May 15th, 2020 for high schools that are served within our city limits. So OBA, Chisholm, Pioneer is out at Waukomis, but, and again, I reiterate, this would be outside and with social distancing, and, but allow the high schools to go ahead and have a graduation ceremony.
Second.
How on earth would there be a socially distanced graduation ceremony for Enid High? Like, as a practical matter, what outside venue would in any way that be practical? I mean, because the Selby Stadium is, you can't have a socially distanced ceremony there. I mean, it's too tight. So how exactly do you expect this to occur while still maintaining these social distancing requirements?
Ben, I realize you have faulty equipment over there and you didn't quite hear what the amendments, what I was saying during the amendment. Enid High has already publicly stated what they're going to do for their graduation ceremonies. We realize there isn't a place that would facilitate that, but it was published in today's paper what their intention is, And so this does not affect Enid High School. It would just affect OBA, Pioneer, and Chisholm. And they have outdoor facilities that would be suitable for the size of school that they have to adequately protect the students and the parents and whoever wanted to attend.
Well, but even OBA, I mean, say they have a graduating class of 50 people and you have presumably family members and friends that want to come see them. And so what facility can hold 250 or 300 people while maintaining social distancing requirements in any meaningful way? How does that work?
Again, you must not be hearing what I'm saying. I said it's outside. They would have to do it outside. They have stadiums.
I heard that. I just don't think that's practical either for several hundred people in any outside facility to maintain social distancing. I think we are bastardizing the term social distancing if we're saying we can have 300 people in an outside venue and still be, several feet apart and not putting each other at risk.
I understand where you're
breaking
coming from,
the term.
But I've made my motion for an amendment, and I'll wait and see if there's a second.
Well, I'll second it, but I also want to say I had a meeting yesterday with Andy Wilkins from OBA. His plan is to put all the visitors, all the family, out in the center of the football field with chairs and divide them up in family units, no more than 10, and then put the students on the track or up in the bleachers. So he's just going to flip it so that they can accommodate that. They've already been working, trying to work through that. So I second that, your motion.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Norwood?
Aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Nay.
Commissioner Waddell?
Nay.
Commissioner Stallings?
Aye.
Commissioner Mason?
Aye.
Mayor Pankinen?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-2.
Okay. Item number 5, discuss and take necessary action on the fiscal year 2021 City of Enid budget.
Well, wait a minute, Mayor, have we covered everything that, I know I talked to you earlier, there was a couple of changes on there on item 5.5, is that what we're just on?
That's what we're going to now. That's the budget, though.
5.4 then, the declaration. I just wanted to be clear to the commission, there were a couple of changes in there that weren't discussed. And so let me bring those to your attention.
Please do.
Section 7B on practices.
On B,
Yeah, 7.
yes, we're going to maintain that now. I think there was confusion
Okay.
amongst the public, and so this is a good place to put that because it may appear in the paper, and at least it's publicly stated. We allowed teams to practice, not have league play. So, for instance, your golf course can be open, but you can't have competition. And the same with little girls softball. They can practice, but we're not going to have the league play set up. So
Okay, and yes, and I guess you've already voted on it, so I guess I missed it. So
Yeah.
we'll move on, Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
thank you for that opportunity, though.
Yep. All right. Okay. Item number 5.5, discuss and take necessary action on the 2021 City of Enid budget. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. We'll be starting the budget discussion tonight. And then we will meet again on Thursday, the 7th, at a special meeting at 5 p.m. And then the following Thursday, the 14th, at a special meeting at 5 p.m. And then we'll be back to the regular meeting on the 19th, hopefully for approval. But we will just see how these meetings go. We'll start with page 10. This is our budget summary. This tells everything, all funds that we budget for. We have a total budgeted revenue of $156.5 million, and we have budgeted expenses at $163 million. This is a decrease in budgeted revenues of $8.1 million compared to this fiscal year, and a decrease in budgeted expenses of $3.9 million.
Could you highlight for us where the money is short? Just generally, what?
Right off the top, we're going to have what we have budgeted for sales tax revenues is 10% down compared to what we budgeted for this fiscal year. And then there's a decrease in water revenues.
On the sales tax, is that following the trend line that we're seeing now, or is this just kind of an extrapolation of how you really kind of feel inside?
A little bit of both. This year, we've only met our budgeted for sales tax, maybe 2 months, and I think there were kind of anomalies. I think we found out that there were some pipe purchases that were pretty large, and that's the only reason that we even met our sales tax in those 2 months. But considering everything's been closed, big portion of our sales tax, and we don't know how long that really could affect what we're doing with the COVID. And
Let me jump in and just help out just a little bit. You're doing great. About 1% down. We're about 1% down right now is what I recall from the last update I got. Just like Jennifer said, we had experienced a couple of months of high use tax attributed to pipe purchases. One was in September, one was I think in February or March. But I do know that, as she said, that the receipts that we got in March and April, which are really for January, let's see, January we
receive in March.
February. Okay, yeah, so January and February then, about 2 months behind, have actually been large increases compared to the previous year. And use tax was part of it. Oklahoma Tax Commission was doing some sales tax enforcement back in December, January timeframe, encouraging people to send in delinquent taxes, so we think that was part of it too. And I don't know what we're going to get from the Tax Commission in a few days. We get it around the 10th. But I'm anticipating seeing, we may be down. I don't know that we're going to be a whole lot down because May's receipts will be for March. And the shutdown of businesses really occurred somewhere later in March. And I know that also throughout March, there was a whole lot of panic buying going on in the retail sector. So I'm not sure what kind of decrease we'll see. If we even see an increase, I wouldn't be surprised. But in June, when we get April's receipts, I would expect a downturn. And I know Jennifer will take us through, dollar-wise, I don't know exactly what we're projecting now, but we're 10% down on sales tax. I think overall sales tax, you can tell us, one of these slides probably tells us, is about 34 million or something like that.
Right.
So roughly
we'll
we're
get
talking.
into that when we talk about general fund.
I was just really looking for a holistic kind of view of what we're thinking.
We think we're going to be fine through June, even if June's really down. We're projecting 10% down for next year, and that's significant to us. Could it be worse? It could be. I'm hopeful that with restarting businesses, that we'll see some down months early in the new fiscal year, and then I'm hoping that we'll get back at some point. It may not be normal, but hopefully it'll be within our projections.
Sorry, I stopped.
No, that's okay.
It's fine. Yep.
So we'll go through and see a lot more detail. The first several slides is just an overview of the entire budget, and then we'll get into individual funds and departments later. So this next slide takes that page 10, and it looks at the funds taking out and removing the transfers in and transfers out. So this is what revenues and the expenses look like when you take out all the transfers. We have multiple transfers that go in and out of several funds. So the original budgeted revenue of 156.5 million would actually be reduced to 95.9 million. And also with budgeted expenses, the original of 162.8 million would be reduced to 102.2 million. The deficit is still the same on if you look at either way. So the main categories of our expenses are personnel expenses, operations, capital outlay, and debt services. And the personnel services of overall is 33% of our budget. Operations is 31%, and capital outlay is 18%, along with debt services.
Which slide are we on?
That was a summary of page 10, I think.
Yeah, the third slide.
Okay. That one.
Right.
Jennifer,
Yes.
explain to me, page 10, 80.
Yeah, funding.
We'll get that just in a little later. There's a definition I can tell you right now, but we'll get to that later. So this comparison is looking at each individual fund that we have deficits and one surplus. So the general fund deficit, we usually try to budget a balanced budget for all of our funds, but with revenues being lowered in a few areas, it's found to be very difficult this year. So the general fund deficit is almost 2.5 million. They have we're projected to end with a $13 million fund balance, so they have the funds available to cover that. And special projects funds is where the state and federal seizure monies, and they just have that depending on the timing of when they receive it and then when they decide they're going to spend money on their projects or what they use the special projects for. So their fund balance should end with 268. They have enough to cover their deficit. Airport fund has had prior year fuel sales last year and this year that were pretty large, so they have the fund balance to cover their deficit, to do some light maintenance projects and a few vehicles. And EMA has plenty of fund balance for the end to cover their deficit. Stormwater, we transfer every month from EMA based on what was billed actually in that month prior. And so the stormwater fund actually builds fund balance there. And then the capital projects escrow fund is where you have specific fees collected through the development part, and they're related to specific basins for stormwater improvements. So when there's enough funds that have accumulated in each of those basins, and then they can transfer money to the stormwater fund, where the stormwater fund is where the actual expenses are and projects are completed. And then the escrow fund just transfers a little here and there when it's in that specific basin. 911, police, and fire all have, should have fund balance to cover, and fire has actually a surplus, which is just according to their funding resolution, and they have low expenditures for capital outlay this year. And this is a comparison. It's not clicky. Okay. This is a comparison of back to the slide before, and it compares it to the prior year. So where we were taking the original budgeted revenue for this year of the 156.5 million that goes to the 95.9, we compare that to the same for this fiscal year, and there are variances for each category: revenues, and then personnel, operations, capital outlay, debt services. And each year that is shown,
the category totals, percentages are almost identical. So it's usually where we fall on the basis of that.
In personal services, did we have a reduction in the number of people? Because I know we don't cut wages, I wouldn't think, but if we're gonna try and make $1 million, is that because you're lapsing positions or?
There have been a few position changes. Overall, I think we went up 2 actually. This is across the board, across the whole entire budget, and it doesn't seem like a lot, but when there's changes just in one person making a health change, going from single to family or vice versa, then we have long-term employees. We've had several that retired that, were 30, 40-year employees. And of course, when they retire, they're,
By somebody newer. Okay, good.
you hire younger and you hire, they may not be married, so they're gonna have a single plan, but that's across the board, for the entire budget, which we also budgeted, flat as of right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think I probably just need to go ahead and indicate, it's everything she said too. We specifically have not included pay increases for anybody in this budget due to the difficulties that we foresee. That doesn't mean that that might not happen or couldn't happen. I just want to be clear there, but I want to say that's probably important to note too, because normally our practice is to try to budget something in there. We have not done that this time because of the difficult environment. Doesn't mean that it can't happen or that it won't happen. We hope revenues are going to be a lot better than we're budgeting. So I want to be clear on that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So now we're looking at a revenue comparison. So this is also without transfers. We actually have a decrease in revenue of $6 million, or it's actually 5.95% as shown, and that's the same amount that was shown on the prior slide. In general fund, the decrease of sales tax by 10% is the largest amount of that. And we also have lowered franchise fees by $110,000. And all of our fines combined, we lowered by $405,000. And then we have some miscellaneous that was lowered by $99,000. EMA, we have a $2 million decrease in water revenue. And that was based on usage over the last month or so. We don't think that we're going to actually meet what we budgeted for this year. So we wanted to make sure and be cautious, which we usually do, very conservative for revenues, and just in case how long this lasts, we don't want to put money in there that we're definitely not going to see. So that pretty much covers the deficit actually in EMA is that $2 million difference. For EEDA, there's a decrease due to our HUD 108 loan paying off in August of 2019. And that would be a transfer from CDBG, so that revenue is obviously not going to be in there anymore. And all remaining funds had a fairly slight increase. Our personnel comparison, as I said a while ago, we have just 2 increase, and they were full-time positions. Actually, we have 2 full-time positions, and we were down 2 part-time positions, but we were up 2 seasonal positions. And the majority of the changes happened in 6 departments in general fund, and they were really due to seeing what was necessary to accommodate efficiency, and then another part-time increase that was outside the general fund was the EPTA got another transit driver. Any questions about personnel?
Police department's been low for quite a while. I don't think they've ever been up to full staff for a long time. So we might see that increase as well, right? I mean.
This is what we budget.
Oh, okay.
And so we do budget them full staff as we do for fire. They do have vacancies, and police, of course, has carried several vacancies before.
Okay.
That's not their goal, I don't think.
No, it's not.
Which he will probably be talking about that a little bit on Thursday night.
Okay.
We're not holding them back, they just
No,
haven't got the
right,
applicants.
right.
They have 100, I believe, 100 officers, and that's set, I believe, through the code or charter, the numbers that they have. The chief can speak to the particular issues. I know we're constantly working through a union negotiation process to try to stay competitive on wages. So I'll just kind of leave the rest of that discussion to him. I know it's difficult, even when he gets to full staff, which is rare, to keep everybody because in a good environment, there are many jobs that might pay more than a police officer and be less, I guess, risky. In a COVID environment, we'll see how recruiting goes for police officers, and Chief will speak to it Thursday.
Okay, thank you.
Now, this is our operations comparison, and this is actually combining what we consider two categories, contractual services and maintenance and operations. That's what shows on our financials. It does show in each fund, in each department, it will show that also. But when talking audit and things like that, they just look at operations as a whole. So general fund has an increase, a slight increase, 277,000. I've got some more slides later on that we will talk about general fund. EMA has almost the same amount, and we'll talk about that on Thursday evening. EEDA is a decrease of 46,000, and that is due to paying off one of the sales tax incentives this fiscal year. Remaining funds doesn't have a very large decrease, but we'll discuss it when we get to each of those funds. So the overall increase is 443,000 in our operations categories, or 1.41%. Next slide will be our capital outlay comparison. The majority of these is with our CIP program, capital improvement program. That totals a $603,000 increase, and that's just based on the priorities and projects that are chosen for the budget. And the remaining funds is actually a decrease of 282,000, and it's the same thing for them. It's just priorities and what projects they choose. Then our other category, debt service comparison. So we pay debt out of our Enid Municipal Authority and Enid Economic Development Authority. And our Enid Municipal Authority actually went overall down almost 1.5 million. We paid off the tower loans, the water tower loan early. And in the first part of next year, we will be paying off the line of credit and the 2015 note. So they're in there just for partial of what they normally would be for the following year. And then the Economic Development Authority has one outstanding note, which is the Academy note, and we paid off the HUD loan. That would be the other one. So the Academy note will pay off in 2023. And there's more detail about both of these on Thursday night when we go over the EMA debt. Any questions on those before we move on? So this is our schedule. That completes the budget overview. We will be going over the 6 funds that are in yellow tonight: general fund, health fund, community development block grant, sinking fund, advanced development authority, and the Enid Economic Development Authority. Then on Thursday, May 7th, we will cover the 9 funds in blue. And Thursday, May 14th, we will wrap up our budget discussions with covering the capital improvement program, and they are marked in green, the 7 funds in green. So we'll start with general fund. Here's where the big differences are for our revenues. You can see the sales tax group right off the top is the decrease, the franchise fees that we talked about earlier, and then the police fines. So we're down 4.2, and this is also looking without any transfers in there. So the transfer from EMA to general fund of over $11 million is not included in here. Any questions?
So that highlights this, if you go back a slide, that highlights what, 3.5 million is what we're tracking down on sales tax. That's the biggest impact in the general fund. And the general fund overall, the budget that we're proposing, and I think is appropriate, is to use some surpluses of I think it's $2.5 million. And I believe we have a balance of, is it 12? And so it'll be down to
13, almost 13.
13. Okay, so I think that's prudent, but you need to know that too. I don't think we're unlike the state government or other local governments. We have the ability, when we have good years and don't spend all of the money that comes in, it goes into fund balance and builds up, and we would want it to, and we want to retain a certain percentage. And this year, I don't believe we're going to be able to build up. I think we're going to need to use some, so that's why we're proposing that. If sales tax comes in better, then I guess we'll be in better shape. If it comes in worse, then we'll have to make further adjustments.
So our general fund expenses, personnel just in general fund is down $400,000 or 3.51%. Our operations have actually increased the 277, which we'll get to the details in just a few moments or a few more slides. And then the capital outlay that has a decrease, that's pretty much the transfers out of sales tax to EMA. So the 1.7 is solely due to the decrease that we have budgeted for sales tax. This is another look at our general fund expenses. So the operational departments are pages 23 to 74. The overall decrease for all of those departments is only down $124,000. Our general fund transfers is down $252,000, and that is our police and fire transfer that decreased $142,000, and transfers to golf decreased by $80,000, and transfers to EEDA decreased $30,000. And then the sales tax transfers account decreased that 1.7, and that's solely due to sales tax. And then the capital replacement account, we'd have an increase of $306,000. And that's just based on requests that came in. We actually had a lot more requests, but we have to prioritize the list when we get that, so. Okay, the next is all the individual departments. General fund has 21 departments, which includes the 3 transfer departments that we talked about on the prior slide. Most of the decreases in budgets are due to personnel changes, which I kind of mentioned before. We have a few departments that did reduce. Legal, for example, they reduced a law specialist, and they had the longtime retiree. And when that happens, it just makes a big difference. Accounting has a slight increase. We had a part-time accountant, and we increased her to full-time. Part of that, we took some of the duties for the law specialist that they did not budget for. So the biggest changes, communications, we had change in personnel there, reducing some force. They did add a communication assistant back, but that's much different than the positions that were reduced. Public Works Management added an assistant or an asset data specialist, and they actually hired them at part-time first and worked out better, so they used and requested to move to full-time. Fleet Management had a reduction in auto diesel mechanic, and I think that was due to the position, actually, the person that was in that position moved to a different department. So the operations that we had, the $277,000 increase that we had 2 slides ago, IT software maintenance increases, and that's just a normal thing when annual maintenance occurs and increases, and there's a few that we've added. And also cartograph is something that Public Works and Public Utilities uses, and we were paying for that in EMA, and now we're paying for it in general fund in the IT department. So that was largely due to his $55,000 increase on his computer line. And he also has a project for backup at the service center. That's an additional $20,000. Code increased their demo budget by $30,000. Most of that was covered by a personnel decrease, but we're just talking about operations, so the operations stands out without those decreases in personnel covering. Road maintenance increased for tree removal in their professional services line, $30,000. They increased their entryway mowing another $10,000. And then they have some vehicle maintenance that they increased another $20,000. And tech services, their tools, parts, and supplies increased kind of across. They have several lines that are dealing with traffic maintenance, traffic control maintenance, and painting supplies. And truly, some of those items that are first now showing up in the details in the budget, they've actually been doing, but they did never have them listed in the budget. So now they have them listed in the budget. So if we have an increase, we know why. But overall, we just have a decrease of $124,000. The general fund transfers. Police and fire transfers are based on their funding formula and their planned capital expenditures. We have the same funding level for VDA for next year from this year. We have a decrease on golf course for $80,000, and that's the exact amount of what their capital expense was for this fiscal year. Funding level is the same for EPTA, and we have a decrease in EEDA related to existing contractual agreements that are in place. Here's another slide with the sales tax, projected 10% down. So we have a full 1 cent for EMA capital and a full 1 cent for cost sales tax. And then we have a slide for just the general fund equipment. So we have several requests that did not get on here, but we'll have to see what revenue does later in the year. Safety requested a truck. Communications requested a smaller SUV van. IT has several pretty big projects. We have a Great Plains upgrade, which is our financial software. So we'll be involved with that in accounting. And then they have network storage unit increase and the 95 Ruckus wireless access points. Engineering needed some survey equipment. Public Works also requested a smaller SUV van and also a truck. Code enforcement requested trucks. Fleet requested a forklift. Parks and Rec requested ball field mowers, a truck, an ABI ball field machine, HS skid loader trailer, Gator utility vehicle with a spray rig. Street requested a truck, an asphalt zipper, and a roller. Tech Services requested the mobile scissor lift and a truck, and then library needs a new server.
And I'll just jump in. One of the things that's near and dear to my heart, and I think maybe yours, is that asphalt zipper and roller to help augment our efforts in the roadway maintenance department. We do have that laydown machine that we can use now too. This zipper rips up old stuff and allows us to put down a new layer. Again, what our capabilities are not going to be a complete renovation like what happened on Broadway. We be focused on lesser streets that would extend the life like 5 to 8 years, and there's plenty of need for streets in our community. And I'm excited about the leadership in Public Works, Everett Glenn and his team, Brian Bruce, Ashley Humphrey Humphreys, our foreman, and the efforts they're going to be making and continue to make. And so I just want to bring that to your, as we read these long lists of things, staff has submitted these, and we've tried to prioritize them and put them on there. And that's just one thing I wanted to point out to you that we want to get, so.
I have a question about this list. Is this list what you're proposing to consider, or is this just the wish list?
No, this is the list that has made the budget that I present to you. If there are some things that you feel like aren't on there that we should address, certainly this time or before we're done with the budget, we would want you to tell us if.
This is the stuff you're saying, yes.
Yes, yes.
The other few items that are actually not in here, Public Works and Public Utilities prioritize their long list from every department. And so we just kind of put the top 12 actually in for Public Works this year. Normally we have to cut more than the few items that we did cut, but they do have their top 12 priorities for Public Works, and then of course the other projects and other requests from the other departments in general fund. So it is an increase of $306,000 from what it was last year, but the requests were pretty important. So any other questions about general fund before I move on to health fund?
Mayor, I think that sounds reasonable to me. If
I have a motion for no. Let's take, it's 7:58. Let's get back together at 8:10. Take a few minutes. That's all right.
Yeah, once I get here, it's fast.
Yes, ma'am.
outside graduation are.
Well, this would be the time to ask.
Except,
Well, like,
what about it?
I know,
I talked
I
to
know.
Dr. Floyd, and he'd say,
Well, in them,
Yeah, that was just, that
and the whole thing was just for OBA, really.
so like, I was looking at general government, where it was in 2018-19 budget, it was 616, and in 2021, we're proposing 910. What changed there? I mean, that's significant. That's 48%. What, from,
so the first column is actuals that happened, so I would have to go back, because our pages only hold 2 years
okay.
here, but the very first section,
that's where the, we're expecting the OG&E franchise, we had said the Think franchise. Now, this is the expenses. Oh, the expenses?
yeah, the general, government, I don't know why it would be that.
Unless you're too.
I don't know, that's why it's due. I thought he was wanting to know why it was. Sorry, I shouldn't have said anything.
No, that's all right.
Here's what needs to be signed tonight, and then this is attached to.
I'm playing.
Yeah.
I try to play every Wednesday, and I took off till last Wednesday when we finally opened it up. Seniors do, what is, essential activities? Intersections. Which includes. I usually, yeah, just because I live there. Yep. Yep.
With those lights instead of.
Huh? See, we got everybody here? I guess we do. All right. Let's go ahead and reconvene. All right. Jennifer, go ahead and press on.
Do you want to go ahead and ask me the question?
Well, yeah, but I don't want to get too far down in the weeds. I tend to look at trends over several years, and I know everything goes up. But if you go back to page 12 under general government, I was looking at the 2018-19 budget and the projected budget for 2021, and it's an increase of 48% from 616,000 to 910. That's a pretty sharp increase, almost $300,000. And I was curious what drove that. Like,
So the first column in the first section, normally they would be blue pages. They're not blue for the draft, but when you get the regular budget book, these will be part of the blue pages. That first column is actuals, so the actual expenses. So I don't have that in my book right here, so I would have to find that. It seems like, though, just 2 or 3 years ago, we had that's where we pay liability insurance in general government. And I think we had a large discount from who we pay our insurance to, but I will have to go back and look at that one specifically. I have a note, so I'll bring
Okay.
that to you for Thursday.
okay. Probably another question I had on page 14, it indicates work comp judgment, and if we don't need to get into that in detail right now, but I'm seeing $200,000. Is that, how long will that stay on there? Is that just for 1 year, that judgment?
We put in approximately 200,000. This is part of EMA revenue, and we put that in each year, not knowing, we talk about the sinking fund
okay.
judgments, which I will, in just a few slides,
Okay.
talk about what the definition of that is. And so when EMA gets reimbursed, that would be the revenue of it based on when we get the sinking fund judgments back over a 3-year period of time. So
Just one case, though.
it would be several cases, obviously. So we haven't actually had any in this last year, so there wasn't any. This will be the second year we haven't
Okay.
invoiced
So those are
anything.
just dollars
So-
you are proposing to set in there in the event that we had to have them?
Right. And it also shows on the expense side also. So it's kind of a wash, if
I see.
you will.
Okay, and the one other question, and I think I know the answer to this one, on page 44, find out where I was, on these, so that is under the records and receipts, and where it talks about health insurance transfer of an increase of $11,000, so, or 30%, from 38,000 to 49,000. We self-insure, right? So is that of those employees in that group, we had claims that went up $11,000 more than we?
No, these are not claims. This is actual premiums that each department pays to the health fund
Okay.
for their employees. Records and Receipts has only 5 employees.
Okay,
So this, I can tell you that amount right there was someone that went either from single to family, some sort of family coverage. And that's just the increase between them changing from one year to the next. Or we have different employees that come in and they choose a
Okay.
different. So the monies that are on a health insurance transfer in every department, that money is actually sent to the health fund, which we're getting ready to talk about, from each department, each fund that has employees. And that is where your claims are paid for, out of the health fund itself.
okay, all right. Okay, very good, thank you, that's very, very helpful.
Okay, any other general fund questions before we move on?
And just so you know, this won't be the only opportunity to talk about the general fund. We'll come
No.
back at a later time. So it won't be the last chance to visit it if you have questions.
Okay.
So the health fund is on page 87. So the health fund is actually our health services to our employees, and that is considered an internal service fund. So internal service funds are established to finance, administer, and account for departments or agencies of a government whose exclusive or nearly exclusive purpose is to provide goods or services, which would be what our health services are, to government's other departments. And that is done on a cost reimbursement basis. So just what we were talking about, everything, all that transfer that comes from all of the departments is specifically to cover the employer's side of each employee that we cover in the insurance.
Okay,
So the numbers for the budget are analyzed based on 2 factors: the city of Enid's past claim history and industry trends. And we have a balanced budget this year. Revenue and expenses are $5,882,880. They have a projected fund balance to start next year of approximately $1.57 million. So we'll move on and talk about just the revenue side. There's actually a decrease on the revenue side kind of across the board. Mostly is the possible changes. General fund, you can see one of the lines is from the general fund departments. And then we have one revenue line that's from the enterprise funds. Then we have employee contributions, which is what we withdraw from the employee side, and then it goes to the health fund to cover their share. Then we have retirees, COBRA, and then dental. And so across the board, they kind of are all lower. Retirees and COBRA have kind of been trending down for a couple of years, and so we went ahead and adjusted the revenues. Expenses are also down $320,000 or 5%. And most of that is due to a decrease in health claims of over $500,000. It's offset by an increase in health fees and dental claims, but the majority of it's in health claims on
What
the
do you,
decrease.
I mean, well, how do you account for that? Claims being down so much? Are we have more younger employees? I mean, what's happening, you think, out there that allows that to go down $500,000?
That I would have to check into. We had a couple of really big years, I know, so this may just be getting back to normal, but do you have that, or?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is we are insured, while we're self-insured, Blue Cross Blue Shield is our claims administrator, and we're on their plans. We have two different plans for employees. One is considered a high deductible plan, Plan A we call it. Plan B is a copay type plan. On each plan, there are what we call 4 tiers, which starts with just single employee-only coverage. I think one of them is it children only, spouse and child, and then whole family, something like that. 4 tiers on each plan. Each plan rates are different for the employee and the employer, and how we determine those rates are, we used to get information directly, and we still do get information from Blue Cross, not only on what claims are, but they would give us what they called an aggregate, and they still do, an aggregate number of what they expect claims to be. But since the Affordable Care Act passed, back in 2010 or so, 10 years ago or more, the complexity of the plan and trying to manage it has driven us towards hiring a consulting company. Currently, our consultant for, I think the whole time, has been Holmes Murphy. And so we frequently talk to them about, particularly as we're coming up on this time, we have them help us analyze what claims are, help us come up with strategies on how we can make plan changes or what deductibles should be. Just this last year, I guess in July 1st, is when we instituted the high deductible plan. And that was a significant change for many of our employees. But anyway, before I go too far afield down that path, they have an actuary that takes the claims through, we get the claims through February or something like that, about 8 months of claims, and then they try to extrapolate it, and we talk about, whether we think, what kind of curve we think it's going to take, and give them some parameters, and based on that and the numbers of employees in the plan, they come out and spit out what we should charge for these rates. We take a look at that and make adjustments and take into considerations about what may be tolerable. And because we are self-insured, we have a little bit of a buffer, because if we have good claims years and build up a surplus, we know we got a little bit of margin, and if we don't, then we use some of that. But in the budget, we get that expected claims number, and that becomes the health claims budgeted number. There are fees that are attached to that. We typically bid those out as well. Blue Cross we've stayed with for a long time for various reasons. But so anyway, that's how the budget is determined. And then as we go, we see what our claims experience is. I believe this current year, we're still having a good claims year, right? So that means we're running a surplus. If things go well through the next few months, we'll end up adding some money. So when we budgeted this, we took the information Holmes Murphy gave us on rates and what they thought the expected claims and what Blue Cross did, and plugged that number in. We also have reinsurance through, I think it's through Blue Cross or whoever we got this year as we bid it. If claims are over 125% of the aggregate, we have insurance to help cover us.
Okay.
So that's something else. And we also have an individual limit. I don't recall what that is, but we can certainly bring back more information on that. So
Can't say we're healthier?
Don't know. We always, actually, the benefit of the large group is there are a lot of healthy individuals. But typically, that's one of the things we look at about quarterly with Blue Cross Blue Shield and Holmes Murphy is how the plan's doing, and particularly high-cost claimants. But we've been doing it a while, and since I've been doing it, there's always 5 to 7 high-cost claimants. And the reason that we want health insurance and we have the good pool is we're going to be one of those high-cost, I'm going to be one of those high-cost claimants at some point, or may have been already. And so that benefit, so yes, we're largely healthy. We do have some initiatives on wellness too. So,
Did have some.
yeah. Yeah. We do. We have an annual health fair. We do those things. We do offer, there's a lot of preventive care. Of course, a lot of that's mandated by law now, that's done at 100%. On the COVID stuff, just so everybody knows, we have already taken the action we needed to on either plan. Doesn't matter what the normal plan is, deductibles and copays don't apply for COVID-related expenses. So it's unknown to us what that's going to mean in claims history over time. So far, it's, as you know, we've been fortunate. There haven't been a whole lot of hospitalized people, and I'm not aware of anybody in the city that's been hospitalized for COVID, but it could happen. So anyway, that's probably more than you cared to know. But
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'd like to say that I appreciate the fact, because I see where you have the little lunch and learn or seminars, specifically diabetes, and that you have attendance for that, and not just one or two people, 6 or so. And that's the most important thing when people have some of these issues, that they get educated about that, because the better they can take care of themselves, the less we got to pay out.
that's a great point. We also have smoking cessation, things like that. So, and I appreciate the efforts of our HR department and the leadership there to work on those things, because that's a direct reflection on what they're doing with the employees.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on. Thank you. CDBG, page 139. The hearing was held tonight on the CDBG funds and what the funding committee had already made recommendations at the hearing. So you saw the slide that Stephanie had earlier, and that's pretty much what would be, we just have like the total funds actually put in the budget, and then she does a separate vote at a different meeting that actually puts those things in place.
That will occur on the 19th. She'll bring that regular allocation that we talked about in the hearing to you. I know there were some changes suggested, and you'll have a chance to vote on that. We capture all of that, and then there's previous CDBG monies that haven't all been expended, and our practice generally is we just put the entire budget in there.
Right.
Those unallocated, or actually all the monies, and then, but we clearly don't spend more than what the CDBG funds are. So that's because that's the sole source of this fund. It's all federal government HUD money that's given to us for those specific priorities set by the funding committee and ultimately the commission.
There's not a requirement that you spend them within a year. I mean, I'm just used to the military where, you know,
There probably is. That's a great question for Stephanie.
Yeah.
I don't know if she's online, but she can answer that better on the 19th. We do have a timeline, and if we get too far behind, HUD reminds us.
Okay.
But it's not expend all by the end of the fiscal year type of thing. So we have more latitude and flexibility than that.
There is one outstanding, like $150,000 that hasn't been spent, and we're still trying to determine, our best avenue, and give them every opportunity that they need. But at the same time, if it's not moving forward, then we need to reallocate that money. But it's, so that's on radar, but it's not for today or the 19th.
Okay.
Stephanie, are you talking about Stephanie, or are you talking about Lisa? No, that's public comments. Public comments. I guess that's what I'm thinking, public comments.
Yep.
Well, it was specifically about this, so that's why I was wondering. Okay.
Maybe is it maybe appropriate now? Lanita has waited
That's
patiently the
fine
whole
with me.
time
Yeah.
to speak
Okay.
about CDBG
Yeah,
stuff.
please come forward. Yeah.
I had added some more things, so I'll wait for the public comment on the rest of it. But my name is Lanita Norwood, 468 East Ohio, Enid, Oklahoma. And the question that Mr. Allen raised is the very question that I had, was, when would the 150,000 be reallocated so that we could use it for, I know I work with one of your, Booker T. Washington. It's a very old building, and we could definitely use some of that building money. And so I would love to, whenever it's opened up, if you allow us to present to you, or if you guys would come to Booker T. Washington. It's a historical site. It was the last building when it was blacks and whites didn't go to school together. That was the Black High School. And we utilize it, and I've stated once before, or maybe more than once, some of the great things that have happened at Booker T. Washington and some of the great people that have came out of Booker T. Washington. Myself, Mr. Derwin, we've had doctors, lawyers, computer analysts, every walk of life has come from that building, and we would hate to see it go to waste, because I was looking up, it serves the underserved community, and we would be glad to bring the whole team in and talk to you. So we don't want you to lose the money. We don't want you to lose it. We want it to be utilized. And I'll save the rest of my public comments for later.
I can share with you that we do not, it has not been, we've not been told that the money is going to be reallocated yet. We're watching it very carefully. And then when we get, if we do get that money returned to us, if it's not going to be used for the purpose it was set aside for,
yes,
then everyone will have an opportunity to come back to us.
Excellent.
I have a long history with Booker T. Washington,
Yes.
my previous time on the commission,
Yes.
from my time on the park board, and I've always been a big fan of what services you provide for the
Yes.
community. So I always have an open ear
Thank
for Booker T. Washington.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
for thinking about the timeline, because
Yeah.
a lot of times government money
Yeah.
has a timeline. We appreciate your time.
I can speak to that $150,000 just briefly. That the organization and the program that was given that money in order to be able to help them purchase a building in order to be able to bring their program along. They've entered into the beginning stages of purchasing another building downtown. So they're still in the process, and they're still actively working in order to be able to use the money what it was initially allotted for. So they have every intention in order to be able to spend it, and they're only maybe halfway through the time frame that they have in order to be able to get it done. They still have until the end of the fiscal year before it even becomes a risk of even considering that time frame. So we're looking well until October. We're barely into summer, so they're still actively working. So that's my hope is that they are able to use it so they can do something to bring another organization on the map, because with every youth organization that we have in the community right now, we still can't serve even a small fraction of all of the kids who need services as it stands right now. So another organization that can help meet the needs of the kids of this community is welcome. So they're actively working to get it done.
Okay. Thanks, Commissioner Waddell. Appreciate it.
Okay, we'll move to sinking fund on page 141.
Okay.
Sinking fund was established by the Oklahoma Constitution for exclusive purposes, one of which is to pay judgments against municipalities. So the city of Enid, by ordinance, levies all judgments in excess of $20,000 each year through an estimate of needs process with Garfield County. The estimate of needs is due in August each year, with repayment to EMA in June each year. So EMA would pay the judgment actually, and then through the sinking fund would repay EMA over the 3-year period with interest. So we actually mail out invoices to the holder, and then when the money's, and then the We take the invoices to the treasurer's office, and then they cut us a check. But we haven't had any in the last 2 years so far, so. Yeah, it's just a number just in case. We've had large years prior, so it's just something that,
It's really just a budgeted number to cover if we did have a whole lot of claims. Could it be less? Maybe, but over time, we've just standardized 300,000. We do have a bank account, right? Sinking fund?
I think that may, there's a balance.
Yes, we get, just to clarify, the sinking fund is kind of a complicated thing. There's an estimate of needs form, as she said, that it filed with the county by the end of August. We list every judgment new judgment that we have. Judgments can only get put on there with you guys approving those. That way we bring those to you. I believe we have an ordinance or resolution Carol could speak to that we only bring judgments that are, I think, 20,000 or more. And typically we've had a pretty good safety program and a pretty good work comp program managed by Carol and her department. And so that submission to the county gets back whatever we say our judgments are over a 3-year period, and we can add 5% to it, I think is the number too, to cover for people that don't pay their taxes, because it's based on the millage rate. When that money comes in, it's collected, it's remitted to us monthly through the county, and we got an accounting process. I think we may have used to have an account at one time. We might still do. But just to note, why does it go through EMA? Because that's maybe some additional complication. We used to fund these through a local bank in town, Security, and then it was asked, there's a statutory interest rate of 3 or 4% or something like that paid on those. And it was asked, well, why don't we, if we have the money to fund that, why don't we do it and get the money? So that chart that table we were looking at that showed a little bit of revenue in EMA, we were just saying 200,000, it varies.
I'll ask a question.
What we get, so. Sorry if I wasn't talking into the mic. That's probably more than you cared to know, so.
Okay, Advanced Development Authority on page 182. This is exactly the same as it is for this year. This is where we have Mike Cooper, his consultant fee and his related expenditures. And we also have the Vance Scholarship monies.
VDA, so everybody knows, and Mayor, you're on VDA, does not have any revenue stream itself. So what we end up doing is transferring, I believe, from the general fund, which is that transfer from other funds number. So every year you will see that in VDA. The big expense is Mike Cooper's contract. It's been $120,000 for 10 plus years. And there's a few miscellaneous fees, Mike's travel. Oh, and the scholarship reimbursement program.
Okay, any questions before we move on? Actually, I think I'm done. So until we move to EEDA. I'm done with the,
Item 5.
with the 5.5.
Okay.
Unless anyone has any questions.
Jenny, thanks, Jennifer, appreciate it.
I think we sufficiently wore you down, maybe.
Okay. Item number 6, consent agenda items.
Move to approve the consent items.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, please take the tallies for vote.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Norwood?
Aye.
Commissioner Rozelle?
Aye.
Commissioner Waddell?
Aye.
Commissioner Stallings? Commissioner Mason?
Aye.
Mayor Pankinen?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Item number 7, recess to convene as the Enid Municipal Authority. Item number 8, all trustees of the Enid Municipal Authority rescheduled regular meeting are in attendance. Item number 9, Enid Municipal Authority rescheduled regular meeting is in session. Item number 9.1, approval of claims in the amount of $328,855.64.
Norwood, move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, please take the vote.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Norwood?
Aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Aye.
Commissioner Waddell?
Aye.
Commissioner Stallings?
Aye.
Commissioner Mason?
Aye.
Mayor Pinkinen?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay. Item number 10, adjourn to convene as the Enid Economic Development Authority. Item number 11, all trustees of the Enid Economic Development Authority rescheduled regular meeting are in attendance. Item number 12, Enid Economic Development Authority rescheduled regular meeting. Item number 12.1, discuss and take necessary action on the fiscal year 2020-2021 Enid Economic Development Authority Financial Plan.
Okay, now we'll talk about the EDA on page 179. Revenues are down a little bit, and operations are down a little bit, and debt service is down a little bit. Balanced budget for this year, just the same as this year, or next year. We look at revenues. TIF revenue is based on estimated amounts. Actual funds are received based on assessed and collected ad valorem taxes within the TIF districts over the baseline. So no change from the current budget year. Miscellaneous income is the Cafe Garcia monthly rent. The reimbursement was where we received the revenue from CDBG to pay the HUD loan, and that was paid off in August 2019. The transfer from general fund pays the specific sales tax rebate agreements that are in place. And the transfer from EMA is the amount required to provide funding for all remaining expenditures.
So we pay rent there?
No, they pay us. Cafe Garcia, we own the property, so they pay us.
Can't hear you through the mask.
They pay us.
Don't we give them the money to pay us? That's not one of those transfer deals?
No.
Okay,
No,
good enough.
that's just the rent. So if we look at the operations, professional services went down 69,000, but that is the retail attractions contract that was rolled under ERDA, which is down under economic development. And then the sales tax rebates are the specific sales tax agreements that we have in place. And that is lower because one of the incentives paid off. And then the economic development actually went higher because the contract moved down under ERDA for retail attractions. And the TIF is just based on the estimate. And so whatever comes in is what we pay out. So that's why the proposed should be exactly the same as this year. Looks like I got a typo. Any questions?
One question.
Okay.
Areas of the budget where we have a surplus, do we take those funds and transfer them to the areas where we're down in funding?
There's some areas that that's not possible. And any transfer from fund to fund has to be approved by council. Within department to department, the city manager or CFO can approve that, but if it goes in between funds, it has to come back to you.
Yes, Commissioner Norwood, that's exactly all this fund moving around, that's exactly what it is. There's really two funds at the city that have money. That's the general fund and EMA. There's some exceptions. Airport fund's a good example. General fund does not generate enough sales tax to pay for everything that's in general fund. So you remember Jennifer talked about, was it 11.5 million or some kind of transfer from
11.3 million.
EMA back over, which EMA is the mother of all funds, the way we see it. So, and general fund transfers to police and fire, for instance, they don't generate, even with that dedicated sales tax, that's not nearly enough to fund those operations. So there's a lot of transfers around from the funds that have money to the funds that are necessary. Many of those funds we have set up that way because there's accounting requirements is largely the reason that we have to account for some funds that way. And so we're constantly moving them around. One of the things Jennifer said at the very beginning on some of those beginning slides to give you a better idea, and you get another great, an even better snapshot of that with the audit. They net out all those transfers, and so I think we said we were going to have 95 million or so of revenue this year, which was down from 102, and so that's the long answer. Yes is the short answer. We move money around. Yes.
The reason why I asked that, because I noticed that the last 2 months we had an increase. We were over, and then we have a projection that we may be a little bit lower due to what's going on. Virus, and I was just wondering if we had to, would we be able to allocate money from one place to another to be able to survive?
Well, that's one thing, Jennifer, you can speak to how closely we track projected budgets, and we will know we cannot overspend. That's the state law, so we can't overspend the appropriation. So as we see issues coming up, we've got to bring them to you in a timely manner to explain why. Many times, if there is increased funding, like for instance, if sales tax ends up being higher than the budgeted amount, we're required to make certain transfers anyway based on where restricted funds go. If we don't have enough budget appropriation, meaning that if our surplus exceeds what we thought it would be, we would come to you and ask, or we would need to get approval to move those, because as she said, we cannot, only the commission can move funds in between funds. So
similar to the year end, Aaron's come to you actually the last 2 years with budget appropriations because sales tax came in higher, therefore our transfers out were going to be over what we had budgeted originally to really to EMA, and we had to do actually an airport budget appropriation earlier this year. They were selling a lot more than we thought at all, and therefore their cost of goods sold just went through the roof, and so that means that their expenses were over budget, so we have to do an appropriation, which you are the only one that can give authority for.
I was just wondering if we kind of, save a little bit for a rainy day, like what we're.
yes, and with us, again, we'll see what happens over the next few months. We're probably going to be down a little bit from the previous year when we compare actuals, but we also budgeted more conservatively this year too. I don't recall what the number is, and so right now, part of why, I guess, a large part of the reason why we're okay is because even though we may be down on actual receipts, sales tax this year, fiscal year to date compared to last year, we're still within the budgeted numbers we'd already expected or originally had approved or changed. If we exceed that or think we're going to, we need to come to you. So if we see that in a week when we get the May receipts and it's something dreadful that really concerns us, that might cause us to have to consider doing a budget amendment, we do have flexibility with the general fund because we still have a positive fund balance, exactly like you said. I don't think that's going to happen by June or before June, but we may still have to do some kind of adjustment. If next year we're more than 10%, we're 12% down, that doesn't necessarily mean that we'll come to you and ask for a budget appropriation, because sometimes we can make up some of those amounts by what she just said, the authority that you give me through the budget resolution to, for instance, freeze some personnel positions. So if we have a surplus of $1 million, and that's probably $200,000 in personnel, and sales tax is 12% down, which is an extra $200,000, we probably wouldn't come to you because that would that would balance out. So, and if times get tough, you will know, because we will be coming to you, so. If they get tougher, I should say.
One more slide where it talks about the EEDA debt. And it shows the HUD loan that was paid off. And then all we have is the taxable series 2015 for Academy that is remaining outstanding in EEDA. And the total principal and interest on that is now $1.3 million. It will be paid off January 2023.
Just to check up on where we're at, Alyssa, are we in EMA still, or are we in EDA? Or?
For EEDA.
Okay, all right, so you're almost done, right?
Right. Lisa has, yeah. So the overall decrease in debt and EEDA of $172,000, and then Lisa Powell is here to give an update from ERDA.
She's been very persistent, so.
Good evening. Good to see everybody. Mayor, commissioners, those online.
Stallings wants to table it, and I told him.
Yeah, no. We've been here this long. I say it's been a while since I've been to a marathon meeting, so this is good practice. But anyway, thank you for your patience too as you work through all these numbers every year. I have a very nice presentation for you. I'm going to spend some time at the beginning kind of explaining the philosophy our board and organization have taken this year and spend more time on that and maybe skim through the rest of the information. I know you have access to this presentation, so you can read it in more detail as you want to and ask questions. Also want to remind you, I know I have talked with every one of you, and we've all wanted to get to a point to where I was able to make presentations to you more regularly on a quarterly basis, and we just never have the time. So we will set that for a goal again next year. Please invite me to come speak to you anytime you want. Also, remember that my meetings are also open meetings, and so you are welcome to attend those as well. So,
except we have a few commissioners already on your board, so we can't exceed.
Well, that is true. And I do want to thank those that are serving on my board. Mayor, you being one of those, Commissioner Stallings and Commissioner Waddell all do serve on my board, as well as Gerald as city managers and non-voting members. So hopefully you guys are carrying the water back to the other members here and helping you stay informed as to what we've got going on at ERDA. Apologize for the glasses, but I'm getting to be that age. So this year has, at ERDA, we have been extremely busy on a number of fronts. A lot of it has centered around the focus of realigning our resources and putting a stronger focus in fewer areas for our organization. We started that with some strategic planning at the first of the year with our board of directors. And do you want me to click this, Dana? Okay. And at that planning, our board selected 4 areas in which to focus, but I will highlight that in essence, it's primarily 2 areas, with the other 2 being supportive of that. Business retention and expansion, BR&E, as we refer to it, is something that in economic development, we are always spending about 80 to 85% of our time. And that is working with existing local businesses here in the Enid area to ensure that they are happy, healthy, strong, and growing in our community. We have, as a part of that, we have 55 member companies. It's getting too late. Member businesses as a part of ERDA, and they pay membership dues to help support economic development in our community. That item there says 85 business contacts. I think that is inaccurate. We have 85 existing pending projects that we are currently working, And so I know that we have talked to more than 85 businesses since July. It's probably at least double that because not everyone we talk to has a project. In fact, probably 2 in 10 have a project that we actually end up working on. So we provide primarily technical support to a lot of those other businesses. So business retention and expansion has been our primary focus. So that's really expanding the communication lines with our existing businesses and touching base with them on how they're doing and the needs that they might have. If you will look down to number 4, the second, that item is workforce recruitment. That is really our second area of focus. Having a ready supply of skilled and talented workforce is the #1 driver in economic development nationally, and it's what every community in the country is competing for because we have a shortage of skilled workforce. And as you've probably heard, we have 100,000 available jobs in Oklahoma. We have X number of people without jobs, but the two don't match up because the skills aren't quite right. And so that's an area that we are, that's the second area that we're focusing on. And that requires that we have a community in which people want to live in and want to move to come here to work. You've probably heard me say, that economic development now is inverse of what it used to be, where it used to be you'd have a company and workers would flock to your community to work there. And now it's you have a community where people want to live and businesses flock there because you have the people. And so the other 2 areas, quality of life initiatives and retail recruitment, really work to support the workforce recruitment that we're trying to do for the community. Number 5 was not necessarily a priority set by the board, but it's something we've spent a lot of time on, which is just refining and documenting some work processes. We're updating our policies and procedures. We've developed an application for projects that are looking for funding or other support from us and are working through approval guidelines and metrics as to how to score those projects for funding. And we've established a project review committee as a subset of our board that can help screen those prior to those going to the full board for consideration, which helps shorten our board meetings. And then strategic planning. In addition to what planning the board did in July to start the year, we did the first ever ERDA business member strategic planning initiative on February 28th. So that was not too long ago. We had about 55 people show up for that, business members of ERDA. Many of you were there. We had some other partners such as Enid Public Schools, some of our key education partners were there. And so we did some visioning for Enid and what types of goals we would have for Enid over the next 10 years. And so we'll talk a little bit more about where we hope to take that going forward. This is an overview of our programs, many of our programs. Start with Enid, Grow Enid Loan Fund, Downtown Sprinkler Assistance, summer internship programs. We run the Young Professionals Organization. We also manage an entrepreneurship group of all the education facilities in the community and the entrepreneurship support we provide through that. And we also run the Enid Business Organization. We help coordinate the Enid First team. We are doing the first ever microenterprise grant, thank you to some CDBG funding. We just had the deadline for those applications Thursday evening, and we received 7 applications. We initially intended to fund one of those, and at my board meeting this week, we'll be talking about whether we are interested in funding more than one, given the COVID pandemic and the shutdown of business, and whether or not we can use some additional funds through those applications to support any of those businesses that may have needed that. We help businesses with location assistance, and then we provide a one-stop shop where project coordination, and that's where we do a lot of technical assistance for businesses, whether they are looking to, for just a myriad of things, both at the local, state, and federal level. Recruitment this year really has taken a backseat, but it's something you can never stop doing. We started the year with a mock site visit by a site selection company who works most of their time for corporations who are looking to place a new business in a new community. And so they are in the business of scoring communities on their assets and their attractiveness for a business location. And so we hired them to come to Enid and evaluate us on our readiness for site location. And so they spoke at our annual meeting last July. As I mentioned, we have 85 projects in the queue. We responded to 12 requests for proposals, which those are companies that are soliciting proposals from Enid about locating in our community. We've been doing some promotion of our opportunity zone. We did welcome NextLink as a new employer into our new industrial park, and they built a new building out there. We bought a new CRM to track all of this, and we are in process of conducting a labor study and a targeted industry study. This is, we hired a consultant to do these two studies for us. It's been 11 years since we had a labor study done in Enid. And the benefit of those is that particularly in a tight labor market, when you have a low unemployment rate, it's very difficult to recruit employers who are looking for employees. And those labor studies can help tease out information in our labor market that might say we have a certain number of unemployed, or we have a certain number that are educated over in this career field that aren't working in that career field. So if you brought somebody in that they could employ them, some details like that, but it helps validate our labor market, commuting patterns, that kind of thing, as we work to recruit new industry. And then obviously the targeted industry study is exactly what it is, but it's taking a look at the labor market that we have here, along with the assets of our community in the way of the type of rail service we have, the type of industrial sites we have, industrial parks, available buildings, what type of educational programs we offer through our higher ed or career tech to support employers, and filtering all of that through then what is the best type of industry that would thrive here in Enid that would make the most sense for us to go recruit. So those two things are underway, and we'll have a report out on that at this year's July annual meeting. And we did 3 trips this last year focused on aviation. In Oshkosh, we do call trips around the country. This year we went to Houston, which is where we make friends with a lot of these site selectors who then work with businesses who are making location decisions so that they're aware of Enid. And then we have our annual retail conference. We take, part of what we do is we're always looking for money that doesn't come from the city of Enid to help fund some of the work we do. And so we have this year applied for a grant through the Economic Development Administration for $800,000 to build an additional road, water, and sewer in the Garfield County Industrial Park. This is the park where Tyson Foods is located. And so by doing that, that will allow us to open up more available parcels in that park. We've really had more demand for smaller parcels than originally planned there. And so that will allow us to keep building sites out in that park. We have just submitted $179,000 in grants to USDA Rural Development to support a couple of small businesses in our community. And then still yet to be announced, we're hoping it's next week, but we have 2 companies in Enid who will be recipients of the Oklahoma Reboot program that the governor has just funded through his closing fund. One of those is PT, that has been announced, but the other one has not been announced yet. But we're very proud to have 2 of the 30-some, maybe it won't be 37, 30-some here in Enid. Our plan of work got a little derailed, as everybody else's did, and we spent the last 6 weeks making ourselves informed of all the programs and funding available to support businesses in the community that were affected by the COVID economic shutdown. We did a program of partnered with Main Street on a Shop Local campaign to incentivize and reward people for shopping local. And we worked with at least 57 businesses on technical assistance and outreach during that time. I was talking to someone today, and really primarily at our core, we're a marketing and sales organization for the city of Enid. And so Here are some of the marketing things we've done. We were also the lead complete count committee for the county, and I have served on the state complete count committee. We did 8 E-Town Enid success stories, which I'll show you one here in a second. We did a shopinenid.com website that was really in response to Dillard's closing and me hearing that people were not aware of where they should shop. And so that site provides a lot of information of the other available shopping options in Enid and what you can find in those stores. There's an Enid Opportunity Zones website to advertise the projects that would be available in our Opportunity Zone. We did some marketing videos and the other stuff you see all the time. Here's one of our success stories. I hope you are seeing these in E-Town. We did Nicholas Commercial, Weimer Brownlee, Dents Mechanical, PT, Messer Bowers, TPI, Encompass, and Northcutt Auto Group. And these are one of my very favorite things ever to get to do, especially because so many of our businesses are multi-generational, and we get to take these pictures of the many generations of the families in those in businesses and brag about their success. So. Here's our visioning session that I mentioned. And so basically, we came up with over 250 ideas out of that group, and we narrowed it down into 6 categories: education and training, industry retention and recruitment, retail retention and recruitment, quality of life and tourism, downtown development and infrastructure. I added one, emergency preparedness. And so this is an area of economic development that we always want to work in, but it always gets pushed to the back burner, and probably there's no time like the present to start making some emergency preparedness plans for all of our businesses, not only for tornadoes and other natural disasters, but should there be another economic shutdown as a result of the pandemic, we want to help them have some plans in place to continue through that shutdown. So here's some buckets of where our funding was spent in this current fiscal year. $142,500 in small business funding. Retail on there, that says $5,800, and I realized I missed a number, so that really should be $17,800. Recruitment, we spent about $50,000, and then local business and retention and expansion was $140,000. As you saw in the budget presentation, our request this year is for $603,000, which is an increase from $550,000, which is what we've had the past couple of years. That increase is to cover the cost of the contract from Retail Attractions, which has moved from the City of Enid to ERDA. There were many years that we did receive a $600,000 budget from the City of Enid. And so in some sense, this may be just getting back up to that budgeted amount as well, but you can look at it either way.
So is this where we ask questions?
I will get you one more slide, and then you may ask questions. There's a comparison of last year to this year on some numbers. So go ahead.
Now we're ready.
Mr. Allen, Commissioner Allen. Yes.
So, so you want to pay, is Ricky Retail Attract?
Yes, he is. Ricky Hayes.
And he's coming over to you because he's going to work harder for you, or you can manage him better, or what's all that? Remind us why that is.
Sure. Yes, so Ricky Hayes has obviously worked for the city for 5 or 6 years, maybe longer than that. And obviously, I'm working hand in hand with the city as well on a weekly basis, as was Ricky. Ricky and I worked very closely together even when his contract was with the city. We get into the weeds of a project together, and so it seemed to streamline the work a little more efficiently to have him reporting up through our office, so that the economic development goals of ERDA would translate into what we're doing in retail as well, and then that project flow would continue through ERDA just like any other project would. It made it a little disjointed, at least from my perspective, to have some of the projects flow through ERDA directly and some of them through the commission directly. But that's really the only reason.
Yeah, there was a couple of us that thought that it made more sense to put all of that in one bucket instead of some of it's here, some of it's there. Oh, we're going to ICSC. Are you going? Yeah, you're going. Well, I mean, they're doing pretty much the same kind of work. So we thought it just makes sense to have it in one area instead.
Well, I remember we were about ready to address that one time, and it was just an inopportune time, and it seems this is the first time that it's been brought up again.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue to monitor this, of course. It gives me great comfort that Gerald and 3 of the commission are there. We couldn't have better people on your board. That absolutely, I don't have a problem with that. I think we're about ready to lose another retailer at the mall. And if that does indeed happen, we're going to be in a terrible mess. Sales tax that we're losing a tremendous amount of money to wherever, whether it's Oklahoma City or Tulsa or likely the internet. And I have a side question. Maybe you can answer this, and maybe it's not appropriate that I ask it at this time. When I buy something on the internet, which is very rare, but it's hard for me to find fishing equipment here, I am charged a sales tax. Does that come back to the state of Oklahoma, and then does it come to Enid because it originated here?
It depends on which online retailer you're buying it from. So if you're buying it from Amazon, the answer is yes. But not necessarily others. I think there are always, Chad Caldwell was running legislation at the state level to put some more teeth in the tax commission's ability to collect those online sales.
Yes.
And
That's
with
the
everything
use
that
tax, right?
happened.
Use tax?
No, it's a sales tax.
Sales, it could be use tax in a certain situation, but it's sales tax.
But with the way this year went, I don't know what happened to that legislation, so.
Right, yes.
And
exactly.
there's been a big push for years to address that at the federal level, and I have lost track of that, so I don't know that has been accomplished either, but.
Don't get me wrong, Lisa. I just have, we pay Ricky's company, and others in Enid pay him as well. And so I'm not always sure what value we're getting when there's other entities in town that are working with him.
He is currently not employed by anybody other than ERDA in Enid.
Good. Well, that gives me a great amount of comfort.
Is that COVID related? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. I don't know.
Well, keep up the good work.
Well, and the situation with retail versus other industry and business recruitment is they are almost mirror images of one another. So I mentioned the challenge with low unemployment and trying to recruit industry and employees. That's a negative, whereas low unemployment when you're trying to recruit retail is a positive. So the metrics and the approach is very different. And any case, so it does take at least another human to do that.
Yes.
So if it wasn't Ricky, we would need to hire someone else.
And Ricky effectively, while he directly works under ERDA, we're still paying for Ricky. And so Ricky's available to us, to me, to you, obviously to Lisa and others. So he is accessible. I forward out, if you'll recall, I forward you out a monthly report that we get from him where it lists contacts he's made. It doesn't get into details, but it gives an idea of who he's talking to. And
I'm not real thrilled about running Ricky through ERDA. I'm still here. Historically, Ricky has not been particularly. Retail is, when we do retail incentives, when we have done retail successfully here, it's been outside the scope of ERDA. And frankly, ERDA for a long time has not, the focus for ERDA from the commission for most of the time I've been on the commission has been focusing on non-retail jobs and industry and recruitment.
and retail as a different creature, in part because retail incentives require the city taking action. I've never been particularly thrilled with Ricky's reporting to us. That report you sent out, Gerald, is completely and totally worthless. It could be regurgitated month after month and be basically the same, because he puts this list of contacts that businesses he's talked to, but he works on behalf of a bunch of communities, a bunch of cities. And so I talked to Chick-fil-A. I don't care, Ricky. You talked to Chick-fil-A about 7 communities. It could have been Enid. Who cares? It's not been that particularly useful. But when you come to us and say, hey, we're working on this retail deal, that's when the city's got to get skin in the game. So if we've got to get skin in the game anyway, and if it's outside of the scope of what ERDA, if it's the polar opposite of what you're doing, Lisa, why are we running it through ERDA? All the money's got to come to us anyway.
Well, I think I'll jump in there a minute. I think we've all had this discussion, just not in a group. I know, Mr. Mayor, as you mentioned, I know some of you have talked to me. I do see the alignment, but I see some of the issues you have. What you're saying about the report is stuff I've heard before. Ricky will say that's a generic type report. I will say one of the advantages I see for me is that Lisa can work with Ricky on that report to make it more useful to you if that's what you want. But I think generally the consensus I got from, again, not as a group, was to move this direction. So that's the way we have gone. And so I think that's the path we're on. That's the best answer I can give you. And I would ask Mr. Mayor and some of the others that have championed this to speak out about that.
Well,
yeah, I've got no problem speaking on this is Commissioner Waddell, by the way. My thought process behind it. Over the last several years, I've only been on the commission 3 years, but in the last 3 years, we've had to focus quite a bit on retail sales, specifically because we have gaps in the market, significant gaps in the market, and those gaps aren't getting smaller, they're getting wider. And so we've had to have a concerted effort in order to be able to try and fill some of those gaps. And having a unified focus and direction from the individuals who are working in the realm of economic development in order to be able to fill those gaps, to me just made logical sense. To have two ends of economic development having to speak through Gerald or any other entity, as opposed to working directly together and then bringing that information and bringing those proposals, those opportunities to the commission as a whole, but running it through the ERDA, which again has 3 members of the council on it, already, to me just made logical sense in order to be able to give a good idea. Yes, this fits the philosophy in which we were thinking about, or no, we're not really looking at that realm. Let's move beyond that, or let's give it a shot and bring it to the whole commission. I mean, at least at that point, we give an opportunity in order to be able to vet some of that stuff, as opposed to taking everything that comes across the doorstep, because we have an entity that's built and designed for that very purpose.
I guess it seems like when we have, again, because retail is by its nature requires a bigger investment, or at least with everything that we've got done here, has required a bigger investment. I don't want that decision made by 3 members of the city council and then to come pre-baked. If it's coming from the city council, if we're paying for it, we should make those calls. And when it comes to us already package baked and then presented as a done deal, we're not making those calls. Further, we are giving, I think, anyone who we work with on a potential development, we're making them do the same thing twice, because, not for nothing, I'm not on the ERDA, and if a retailer comes to the city of Enid and wants $500,000, they've got to pitch it to me, and making everybody do that twice, go through ERDA. But if you want real money, go to the city council and do it all again. That doesn't really seem like, it seems extra work and inefficient, and we're going to be making the call, run it through us.
I don't know of any pitch person or any individual who's had to make a pitch one time to be successful. we've had to go back and forth with multiple projects in order to be able to get that done. But here's what I do think is helpful for those entities. If they can get a somewhat of a thought process from 3 members of a 7-person body, they can get a good idea about whether or not they're barking up the right tree or the wrong tree, as opposed to spending abundance of time putting together a presentation, getting a package together, and then coming before a body of 7 through how long it takes to get on an agenda for the city council, as opposed to ERDA, just to be shot down in the dark.
We meet twice as often as the ERDA. What do you mean? We meet twice a month. ERDA meets once.
Well, I'll put it to you this way: we've been had on the agenda for these houses or these ancillary homes for what, 2 months now, and we still haven't been able to discuss it yet. So the thought process.
It's been the study session, but if you want to put something on the agenda, you can put any of us can put anything on the regular agenda.
Most definitely. It's 9:18 right now, and if that was on the agenda tonight, they would be passed out in the back of the room right now, trying to figure out what it to be able to work it out. So I would just say, from my perspective, and again, I'm not saying that I'm 100% right and you're 1,000% wrong, though I feel that way in my heart. No, but I thought that this process meant more and would be more advantageous for the individuals who are trying to bring those proposals to a body to get a better feel about whether or not they were barking up the tree or the wrong tree. And I thought it was advantageous for the individuals who are working at ERDA specifically, as well as Ricky and Gerald, to have them working together and then bring it to Gerald to say, hey, look, this is what we're looking at. Let's move forward with this, or whatever the case may be. Because again, you have 3 members of the council. In that, you've got 1 or 2 that sit on the project committee, and then you've got 3 that sit on the economic development board. I mean, to me, this is it's kind of funny, because on the art committee, it's basically the same thing, but I don't get the same push for that. I mean, by the time we get the project on the public arts, it's a done deal at that point, for the most part, or at least that's the way it kind of feels.
I mean, as a commissioner, I agree with you. I don't like these deals where we have 3 commissioners go run everything. I don't like that the CDBG committee is 3 commissioners plus somebody else. I don't like any of these deals where we have 3 commissioners who do it all and bring it to the government. That seems counterintuitive to how the 7-person elected governing body is supposed to set up. And I'm a little skeptical about kicking more over to ERDA. But if I'm the only one who feels that way, that's not a hard head count to make. But I don't think that we are making the best use of our public dollars by kicking more money and more responsibility over to ERDA with less in the commission's hands. We're the elected ones. It's
but we haven't spent any net more money. We've shifted the money into their account in order to be able to pay Ricky. But we are paying Ricky anyway, so there is no net loss in that process. It's just simply.
I want to get to yell at Ricky as often as possible, and how do I get to yell at him if he's going to you?
You can still call at any time. He'll answer your call, unless you ask caller ID.
Well, I was not anticipating that was a question for tonight. I thought that had all been settled, so
Well, it would
I
have been if we would
apologize.
have had a meeting that would have allowed that, but as everybody has admitted, that never happened. We were spoken to
don't know
one
anything
at a
about
time,
that.
and you and I have had this conversation, but no, it was never settled. And I hear both these fellow commissioners speaking, and they have both of them have very valid points, and I fall somewhere in between. I tend to agree a lot with Ben, Lisa.
Oh, I didn't mean to offend you. I wasn't expecting the questions, so I
I'm trying
wasn't
to be
prepared.
nice about all this, but the bottom line is I don't feel good about it. And the bottom line is I have to be the decider when it comes down to it.
Yeah.
And so let's let this go a year. Let's see how it works out. But nothing is ever etched in stone.
That's absolutely true.
Jerry, I have a question. Are you against Ricky or the process with the ERDA? I think I'm not against the process of the ERDA.
Okay,
No, sir.
that's what I thought.
Not at all. Not at all.
That's good.
No, and that's why I told Lisa, I said, I'm a fan of her and I'm a fan of the ERDA. This moving
Ricky over is something I'm not quite sure about.
Well, we could have another meeting and talk about what the worth of Ricky Hayes is.
Sure.
Relative to what we're spending
bet.
money. And Lisa
You bet.
could provide us a lot of information about
Yes.
that. And we still could be a 4-3 vote on it, because none of us are going to have the same ideas.
Yes, sir.
That may be something that needs to happen.
I'd be
Yeah.
interested to know specifically what he has brought to us. I'd like to see that.
And I'd like to have a little more discussion about, I mean, this is our one bite at the apple on how we get to direct ERDA. Lisa's made a presentation on what ERDA would like to do with our money. But folks, we get to tell them, do that or not. We're giving them $600,000. We get to put some strings to it if we think it's appropriate. And this is our only annual opportunity to do it. This is also, I mean, not for nothing, this is my last budget session. I am termed off before the next budget hearing. So Jerry, if you want to vote, you better think about it. But this is our this is our only annual chance to redirect ERDA's focus. And I mean, this is our only chance for a lot of what the city does. I mean, the budget hearing is when we get to do this. So I know we can talk more about the EEDA fund in general in subsequent meetings. I'm not particularly thrilled with, and again, I don't want to waste everybody's evening at 9:24 when I'm the only guy who has any particularly strong feelings about it, but I don't love the direction that ERDA is pointing in this, and I'm not sure that this is the best use of our money to this end. If there's not any great appetite to pursue that discussion this evening, I'm not going to push it, but I do think it's worth noting that this is the one shot we got all year.
I disagree with that premise, because every year in the summer we have a basically a visioning session where we talk about what the priorities are going to be for ERDA for the following year. Multiple members of the business community attended, multiple members of the council attended, and we talk about what our priorities should be, or what we believe them to be. We look at what we've done, where our gaps are, and then we look at what the direction is going, what we believe the direction should be going. And so I think and I don't want to speak for ERDA as a whole, but I will say that there's been a considerable effort and questions asked, what is it that the commission would want as a philosophy or a thought process of what ERDA should be doing? And I could say this: in 3 years, I've yet to see the commission as a whole say, look, we want you to go do this as principles or a philosophy. Now, if it's, hey, look, we want more men's clothes shopping or something along those lines, yeah, I've heard that levied left and right. But in terms of an overall philosophy and thought process, that I've yet to hear that. And so that was one of the reasons why I got on, asked specifically, and I asked you about, getting on that board so I could understand what was taking place, as well as help having input in terms of what the overall philosophy should be. And so now in this process, I would challenge each and every commissioner, if this is your thought process and your feelings, and you have reservations about what ERDA is doing in the direction, I would encourage you attend a meeting, attend the quarterly meetings, because all of this information in the thought process in terms of steering economic development in the it's all there and it's all readily available. And from what and correct me anybody if I'm wrong, I don't know of anybody who's been turned away in terms of information, in terms of conversations with ERDA, Lisa, or the staff in terms of what should and should not be taking place with ERDA. And so now to because I'm okay with this conversation and I think it can be productive, but what has to come next is this. What's the vision? What do you want to come next? If it's just, I don't like what's going on, then where I come from, military, you're just a complainer and you need to just fall in line. But if you don't have a direction in terms of what needs to come next and some processes, then man, I don't know what to do at that point.
Well, I mean, okay, so I was on ERDA board for 3 or 4 years, I can't remember which now, and I went to several of those visioning sessions, and I found them to be a complete monumental waste of time. The ERDA staff is competent folks. You always have been. Lisa, you're competent. Debbie, Brent before you. And frankly, it felt like those visioning sessions were a great way to make the board of directors feel like they were doing something, and then the staff basically did what they thought was appropriate, or with most of the time, responding to external responses, responding to folks who were coming to them and providing services. So I'm fundamentally skeptical of the value of those visioning sessions, but I do think that for the governing body, the one shot we have to say this is what we want to do, and this doesn't just go for ERDA, this goes for every single one of these funds, is the budget hearing. This is the time where we could say, any 4 commissioners can say, this is the string on these funds, do it or don't spend the money. And so getting involved in the board of director visioning, getting involved in all that is all well and good, but it's also, I mean, first of all, only 3 of us can ever be at those meetings. But second of all, it's non-binding. Ultimately, the board of directors hires an executive director and sets a budget, but the executive director of ERDA basically kind of gets to steer ERDA. It's the way we do with Gerald. We hire a city manager and we do a budget every year, and then we go forth, Gerald, and run the city. And ERDA is very similar. If we want to redirect it, this is the time to do it.
So I might like to say something. Let me interject. As a hired leader of an organization and the professional that has been trained in the profession, and you've hired me to do this job, I know how to do any sort of economic development that we want to do. There is an infinite number of things we can do in economic development, an infinite number of targets. The purpose for board visioning sessions and what we did recently at the larger community visioning session is to take the knowledge that I have in my board of directors, and Ben, I will agree with any of the board strategic planning sessions that you may have attended prior to this year. Those who have attended others, as well as this one, would say that the one we had this year was far more productive and a little bit different. But the reason for those is to get input and solicit input from the stakeholders in our community and the subject matter experts from banking and from manufacturing and from retail and from city council and from education and hospitals and healthcare and all the sectors of economic development as to what they're seeing in their sector and what makes sense in Enid, Oklahoma. And that's what those are for, not because, and then I can take that information and turn that into an economic development plan for what we need to do for Enid. And so that's the goal of those, and that was what was so important for the visioning session that we did in February, was that we did broaden that audience to our ERDA members who pay a membership to be a part of our organization. They are a lot of our larger employers in town. They have a stake in this community and the direction it should go and the growth that we want to see here, and so it's important to solicit their expertise. I mean, Grondike is obviously exponentially more well-versed in transportation than I ever will be, and so it's important to have those people at the table helping with those decisions, and so that's what that's for. The other thing I'll say that I'm passionate about, and part of the reason that I believe we have the disconnect we're talking about today, is because our office has not done a sufficient job in educating you on economic development. And so you don't know what you don't know. You don't understand the lay of the land or the industry or what our levers are to make things happen or not happen, or, you know, what are the tools in our toolbox that we have to play with. And that's why I hope that we can do more sessions. That's why I try to reach out to each of you as many times as I can during a year for conversations, because there's a lot to learn and understand about why things are the way they are, especially in retail. Retail is the biggest enigma, and it gets worse every day, especially after the recent shutdown. Who knows where it will go from here? But there are nuances into making economic development work, and I want to educate the decision makers on economic development on everything I know so that jointly we can set a course for Enid as to where it should go in economic development, and I can help lead that. And so to the extent that I can do more to provide education, that's what I want to do. And happy to do that any way you'd like it, individually or as a group.
And let me jump in just quickly, because I'd like to clarify a couple things too. One is, there's some valid points that have been brought up about, ERDA and maybe communicating, certainly working with Lisa. We can certainly do that. But I want to specifically talk about Ricky Hayes. While we did not have a meeting, I do recall talking to each one of you. I think I might have sent an email. I have to go back and look, because I wanted to figure out the best way to affect what some of you had talked to me about, which was, it seems like Ricky Hayes would line up better with ERDA if ERDA focused on retail too, and that does make some sense to me. And what I recall asking is, do we want to, his contract's going to run out at the end of March, which it did, and do you want to discuss that? Now, maybe that didn't get across to everybody, but I didn't hear from anybody that we needed to do, or that we need to talk about it or not talk about it. So I took that as that's the direction that I took, getting with Lisa, in good faith with Lisa. So I agree with you, Commissioner Allen, that I think we should try it. And I think there's potentially some advantages there. But I don't discount everything that folks have said too. ERDA is certainly needed to help us do this. And within the budget amounts that they have, they routinely work on all those things that you saw, and we want them doing that. There will be some projects that are bigger that I am involved with Lisa working on as we go, because we know they'll take sales tax rebates or Oakwood Mall redevelopment or the district stuff, and those kind of things are going to be coming to you. So we just need to, I would echo the Ricky Hayes thing. If some of you are unhappy or surprised about that, that should be directed towards me, not towards Lisa, in fairness. So I took the path that I thought was the desire of the body in the absence of direct action, and probably in the future, I'll just bring those actions and you can vote on them. But just so you'll know, I think that's a good change, and I think ERDA, I know ERDA, I was at the meeting, and so were 3 of you. I think 3 of you were there that voted for doing it. So I know 3 of you are for it, but that doesn't discount that not everybody hears the message. So that's something I will work with Lisa. Anytime you want an update, we can schedule it monthly, quarterly, and then certainly Lisa can talk to you about the education and other things. So I look at it as a team effort, and so I think there's validity in what all of you have said tonight. So I was going to say, all of you are right.
Yeah, and that was my final comments. This is an ERDA in the city. We are, and should be, and can continue getting better at it, but should be in absolute lockstep every single day on every single issue. Everything you do affects my job. And obviously, I'm working for you to improve the economic conditions in Enid through job growth. And so we have to stay in constant communication. And we have gone a long way in improving that this last year, and want to continue to do that. So
I have 2 questions for you. My first question is, as far as the recruitment, do we ever receive any recruitment from like any of our farmers in agriculture or anything like that? Do they come to you and ask, do you have anybody that's interested, in learning how to plant food and do agriculture, anything? Do you ever receive any applicants?
Well, no, but I don't work at that level in the sense of recruitment. They are probably working more directly with Autry Technology Center, and I work with Autry Technology Center. So I'm working at a more macro level. We've got the providers out there that work with people in job placement, as well as our workforce boards, I work with them to ensure that they've got the programs to meet the needs of employers in the way of training and connecting them with jobs and that kind of thing. So.
Last question is, as far as the summer intern, how does that work?
Well, yeah, it sounds like a much bigger. Well, I shouldn't.
Reason why I asked.
I shouldn't disclose our
Can I
secrets,
say this
but it's
first before you answer it? Can I say this?
Sure.
Reason why I asked because it used to be a program right here in the city offices. That's why I asked you.
all we do. So this has been going on maybe not quite a decade. We recognize that an employer to have an intern is a benefit to that employer because it brings in fresh, new, young talent to that business. But in Enid, our employers are oftentimes so busy working in their business that they don't have the time to go out and recruit and go to job fairs and all the work it takes to find those interns. And so oftentimes it was the sense that, you would pick up local people in your internship, which is great. But we wanted to help broaden that, and so we've provided training to businesses on how to run internship programs and the benefits to them in doing that. And then secondly, we offered and do the marketing for them on their internship. So you might come to me and say, I would like a summer intern, here's my job description. And I would take that job description and go to any number of universities and post it virtually on their job boards and work with even their department heads if there's a specific, maybe there's a degree in construction that would be beneficial for you to get an intern. We might work with that department head. Or we might go to, we've gone to all the regional career fairs. And we set up a booth, which is a lot of fun. And we might represent 12 employers and have 30 different job descriptions laying there. And students can come look at accounting jobs and engineering jobs and marketing jobs and all from Enid, Oklahoma. And so we pay the cost of that booth and we pay the staff support to be there and recruit on behalf of our businesses. That's all we do is collect the resumes. The businesses receive those, hire whomever they want, and then we keep track of the interns that are in town and provide social activities for them during the summer. We also pay for housing for them at Northern Oklahoma College because that's another barrier to internships is being able to find 8 weeks worth of a place to live at an affordable rate. So ERDA covers the cost of that housing. And so we basically do the marketing of the job and cover the cost of housing. And by doing that, I would say we have probably had 15 to 20% of the interns that have ever been in Enid come back and work full-time permanently. And we have had interns from New York City to California and Washington and South America, and so it's really broadened the reach of the talent that we get to bring in every summer. So. Long answer, wasn't it? Sorry.
No, good answer. My concern is smaller businesses like myself. Mm-hmm. We can't really afford all of the insurances that are required. All of the workman's compensation and all these different types of things. And it's not that we don't want to hire individuals. A lot of it is like bricklayers. It's a dying trade.
Yeah.
It's very uncommon. It used to be very common growing up, And I'm just really concerned for our youth and those that are coming up because some kind of way we need to be able to afford. I mean, we have to pay to have employees. You get what I'm saying? Whereas a big company, they're set financially to be able to do that. So there's a whole sector of young people who are left out. Why? Because people like me who can afford to pay for you to work for me, we're left out. So there's a generation without trades or any type of special skills or anything. And I see it because I live it. Unless I'm a big name company who can afford insurance and I'm able to get bonded by banks and different things because, I qualify. Well, if you're just starting out, there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to afford that. So no one would really understand that unless you've been in small business, that world, that arena. And I speak to many constituents about this. We're in the lawn care industry. it's a little bit more affordable. Why? Because their turnover rate when it comes to revenue is fast. But when it comes to hardcore construction, we don't have that turnover rate of revenue coming in fast enough to be able to keep up, so we're always behind. That's my dilemma. And there are many people like me with that type of dilemma. And I need to talk to people like you so that you can educate me.
I got
and
half a
help me
dozen
how to get over
answers
the hump.
in my head that we can talk about depending on what specific piece of that you want to talk
That'll
about. So,
work. That'll work.
yeah.
Okay.
Sounds like maybe a private conversation.
But you're
But
right.
it's needed.
Yeah.
No,
It's much
absolutely. Yeah.
needed.
Yeah.
And it will help increase our economy.
Yep.
I agree.
And that's
It's
what
not
our
when
micro
they're
enterprise
qualified.
grant is for as well. Yes, absolutely. Any other questions? I do honestly thank you all for your support. You each provide a different view and piece of wisdom that help contribute to what we do in economic development, and it's very helpful. And over the past 2 months, I know your jobs have been even more difficult, so thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks.
All right. Item number 13, adjourn to convene as the Enid Public Transportation Authority. Item number 14, all trustees of the Enid Public Transportation Authority rescheduled regular meeting are in attendance. Item number 15, the Enid Public Transportation Authority rescheduled regular meeting is now in session. Item 15.1, approval of claims in the amount of $1,312.88.
Norwood, a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, please tally the votes.
Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Norwood,
Aye.
Commissioner Zell,
Aye.
Commissioner Waddell,
Aye.
Commissioner Stallings, Commissioner Mason,
Aye.
Mayor Pankinen.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay. Item number 16, adjourn to reconvene as the Enid City Commission. Item number 17, public comment. I know Ms. Mitchell would like to speak.
Norwood.
Norwood. Oh, where'd I get? Okay, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to just make a quick comment. This has been a very interesting meeting. Very, very interesting meeting. And my name is Lanita Norwood. Just real quick, and I'm going to sit down, but I know there's lots of controversy about the pandemic, and I was listening to some of the things that Ben was saying, and I agree with a lot that he was saying, because I have lost so many people in southern United States. My former pastor, his wife, he lived through the virus, but his wife died. And these are people that are early 60s, and my bishop, the hierarchies of the church. I have lost so many people due to this pandemic, and guess where it was at? Church and funerals. Those are the two places that these people made the contact, and we lost. We have, and still losing. It's an ongoing battle where they're coming together in church and coming together in funerals, and they're dying. And this one funeral, half the people that were there, either they contracted the virus and lived, the other half died. And these were not old people. These were not poor people. These were very up and mobile and really notable people within their communities. So we do have to be careful with the social distancing. We have to be careful with the mask. I see, different places. I saw a woman jumping, well, she wasn't jumping on, but she was giving this young man a tongue lashing right here at Walmart just on Saturday. Why do I have to wait? Is there a special sale going on? This kid is just having to pace us going into the store. And, it's not fair for the workers to be abused by people that don't want to wear a mask, or if they don't want to social distance. We have to be Americans. We got to love each other. We have to treat each other right, and we have to respect each other. And the scripture that came to my mind, what would you give in exchange for your soul? Would me going to a special place, or if I could get my mother back all the money in the world, I would give to have my mother back, you know, or if you have your child or your father, if you looked at it as a point of a life versus money, we can get things again, but we can't bring mama back. We can't bring daddy back, can't bring that child back. So I think as we're preparing, and I'm so thankful that the mayor said if it changes, if people start dying, more people start getting sick, then we go back to social distancing. That's good always to have a loophole to fall into, but you know, we just have to be careful and be mindful of each other and love each other. We're all Americans, we're all human beings, and that's the way we have to treat each other during this time. And I appreciate all of you. And one thing about it, we can all disagree and still love each other. Isn't that awesome?
We can. Thank you, Ms. Norwood. Scott, do we have anybody else online? Okay. Item number 18. We stand adjourned. Could you tell Jerry that we're adjourned? And, yeah, and Rob, just